You're ready. Good evening. Oh, here's Adam. Come on, Counselor.
Yeah.
How you guys doing?
Good, good.
Let the record show he's right on time.
Let the record show, he is exactly on time.
You pay by the hour, come on. That's why I made that point.
We don't want to pay an extra
I
minute.
know. A minute later.
I round up.
Could have been different.
Good evening, everybody. It's Monday, November 14th, 2022. It's 5:30, time for the Gettysburg Borough Stormwater Authority meeting for November. I am calling this meeting to order. I have no opening or welcoming remarks other than this is our most recent meeting since last August, I believe. So we did not have a September nor an October meeting. We have a fairly full agenda, so we want to get right to it. We will start with, as we usually do, a consensus motion to approve the agenda as presented. Motion to approve all bills and payrolls as presented, that were all emailed to us, and I signed the bills. And a motion to approve the August 8th meeting minutes, okay? Any comments on any three of those items? Okay, not hearing any, I will accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Second?
A second.
Thanks, Pat. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition, same sign. Not hearing any. Those items are now approved. Thank you very much. Public comment. These comments restricted to the agenda, but you're, yeah, and there's another public comment period at the end, Dave, too.
Okay.
So if you don't have any agenda issues, and we could talk after you hear our business.
Oh, that's, yeah, you
Okay.
tell me what you want me to do.
All right, well, why don't we hold off, because some of your comments may be appropriate. We'll work them in, maybe as we talk about projects, which is towards the end, too. So I'll also entertain that ability, okay? We have no special presentations. It's financial update time.
Yes. If you look at your revenue versus expenses report for the meeting today, I want to draw your attention to line item 09357-200, which is grant revenue. The authority had anticipated the receipt of the NIFWIF grant in the tune of $500,000. We all know that that grant failed and was not awarded to the authority. I only highlight that in that now that means the borough, or the authority rather, is responsible for the balance that due on the Culp's Run restoration project, which is why we're showing a deficit of $157,000 for the year thus far. Everything else is reasonably so within budgeted parameters.
And we knew that risk when
We did.
when we went out and undertook
Right.
the project. We knew that we had the cash, and we will have the cash to,
And we do have the
Pay that
cash.
difference,
That's,
yes.
yeah, it's not that we're in debt at the moment.
right.
Yep.
right. Okay, thank you. Deb, any comments on payments or
Well,
anything of that nature?
we were billed, for the year of 2022, 515,250. Of that, we've received 483,850. We have approximately, 1,884 invoices that went out. We have 188 that are still outstanding that if are not paid by December 31st, we're looking at liens in early January. So please pay your stormwater bills. The other issue for postage, if we put a reminder out, it's around $107. If we send the first class with a certified mail, the certified mail comes out to $1,400 for those 188 individuals. So I don't know how you guys want to deal with that. If we want to send a reminder out, we weren't going to do that. But if we don't get any of these payments in of the 188 outstanding, it's going to cost us over $1,500 in mail fees.
Right, remind me what we did in the past. We did
We
send out
usually send out a reminder, but since we switched it
Right.
to a shorter time frame, they have from July 1st to December 30th to pay with a 10% late fee. So I mean,
Go
we
ahead.
can do that, but I don't know how you guys wanna handle it. I just wanted to let you know with that amount of folks, still unpaid, that the fees for postage would be, $1,500.
It sounds like a fair number
Yeah.
of folks. Yeah. Your comment?
Yeah, so you're not legally required to give people any warning at all, and by warning, I mean that.
A reminder.
Thank you, that you're supposed to pay a bill and you did not pay. What you do have to do is give them notice that unless they pay by a certain date, that a lien will be filed against them. And that's where the certified and first class, essentially lien letter concept comes from, that's sent generally 30 days prior to the filing of a lien. If you want to send something in addition to that, you certainly can. It would probably be a good use of your resources. Whether you want to send that first class only or first class and certified is really up to you. Certified tends to get people's attention, but
Can we get that money back somehow with the bill?
you can't
I
get
don't
that
think
back
we can
because
until
No.
it's lien.
you're going above and beyond what you're required to do.
Gotcha, okay.
In an effort to come out financially ahead by saving on lien expenses.
Right,
But you cannot recoup that in the cost of a lien.
Okay.
Or invoice that to the people as a surcharge.
As a suggestion, you said how much for first class? $177?
$107
Oh.
just first class, but if we send that reminder out, that's $107 to the 188 people, and then if none of them pay, we still have to send the first class out again with the certified, giving them 30 days, I believe, right, Adam? Or would the initial first class be sufficient? I think we have to send them together for the lien notification, 30-day payment.
The letters are essentially serving a different purpose. I mean, the first one is a reminder that you
Right.
didn't pay when you were supposed to, and the second is containing very specific legal language that protects the authority
Okay,
in accordance with the Municipal Claims and Lien Act that says you're going to be filed, a lien is going to be filed against you, you're going to be responsible for certain additional fees unless you pay by this date.
right, okay.
So you still have to do that.
First
Your-
class and
your
certified with that.
Reminder letter can't double duty.
Okay,
So if we do what's required, we can recoup the cost. If we go over and above that, we're paying it.
Right.
Right, basically.
With the idea, I guess, that if you send out reminder letters, maybe you'll give people a motivation or prompt them to pay and save on,
Future.
yeah. You recoup the cost of
Headache.
a lien eventually, it's just a question of how quickly.
I can see if Freedom can pull emails and maybe send an email out that would cost nothing, but I don't know if they have that capability.
You can ask them to do that. How soon after January 1st do the lien letters go out?
They could go out anytime as of January 1st,
Okay.
so
Okay.
Adam and I will discuss a date.
I think we should do it the most cost-effective way possible, and that means not certified, but
Just send a reminder.
just send a reminder. If you can do it by email, great. If there are no emails, then maybe that cuts down, the number of letters that go out.
Okay.
But I know it's a paper chase, but I think to
That's a
remind
lot of
people, I mean, we're a
180.
small town, it's a small thing, I think it's a nice thing to do. And if they don't respond, then it's a different path, unfortunately. Okay?
I did have
Thank
one
you.
other thing quickly. The CAP grant, we did get a reimbursement check in the amount of $133,266.
Right.
I did submit 2 additional invoices for the remaining funds on that grant in the amount of $55,722.96. That's going to go to DEP, and it should be reviewed, and we should hopefully get that funding paid back to us in the next 3 weeks or so.
Right, and this is a reminder for everybody. Although we were unsuccessful with one grant, we were successful with another, and that helped fund around $189,000 of the Culp's Run project, which is a big help.
That's all I
Okay.
have.
Okay. Liens filed.
They were filed. I believe it was 32 initially, and then there were 2 that had to wait because of an addressing issue. That was internal to the system. We sent them additional letters. Some of them paid, some of them did not, and there were 2 that I think were filed about a week and a half ago.
And these were
4
liens for 2021 or 2020.
Yes. 2020 into 2021.
Right, yeah, I know it's both years,
Um,
sorry.
The good news is that that was down from previous years. I believe the last 2 years we had 40,
Mhm.
both years,
Mhm.
the first cycle and then the second cycle. So the number of liens is coming down, which may be because people are more understanding and expecting these
Mhm.
invoices. I'm not sure. But the good news is that it was fewer than the last 2 years. And a number of them have paid, probably about a
A
third.
lot of sales are happening, so the settlement companies are paying those fees.
Oh, good, good.
And they call our office and I just send them to Deborah.
Yeah.
I mean, for payoffs, and
Right.
that's not our role.
Mhm.
And I think the system's generally working well.
Mhm.
Good, good. Any questions on that? Okay. Project update. Chad. Culp's Run.
Culp's Run stream restoration is substantially complete at this point in time. It looks great. We're very happy with the way that it turned out. We're going to be able to use that for our pollution reduction credits in perpetuity. So keep in mind, that's not just a one-time thing. Every year, we get the credit for that. 96,000 pounds of sediment was theoretically removed from the
Right.
stream based on the calculations, right? It's all
Right.
it's all in theory based.
And remind us, we have to remove every year how much?
So
Sediment?
our requirement was, I don't remember the
Was it
exact number, but about 54,000.
4,000, right.
Yep.
Right.
So this meets and exceeds our requirement, and it should set us up really well should they make the rules more stringent
Right.
in the future.
So it's a huge credit.
Yeah, it's a really great project. It's done, so whenever I say substantially complete, I leave a window open, right? So there's still, we gotta monitor this thing for the next 3-4 years. The first year, we anticipate some invasives coming in, spraying some of those things. If there's any erosion, so far we haven't seen any erosion. It's really holding up well, but we will have to come in and fix those areas. As it gets more mature and the vegetation grows and it starts to choke out the invasives and that kind of things, it'll take care of itself. But keep in mind, there will be a small amount of dollars that will have to get spent on this, more than likely for a couple of years, just
Right,
as
and we have to
maintenance.
budget for that.
Yes.
And when you say we is the guy sitting next to you, Robbie.
You know, that would be my recommendation. Of course, I don't want to sign Robbie
Yeah,
up
I
for
know.
something, but Robbie is qualified to do some of the spraying, so he would just have to have some coaching, I would assume, with land studies and make sure he understands exactly what you should be spraying, what you shouldn't
Right.
be spraying, those kind of things. But
Okay.
but if we can do it in house, we save some money and then hiring land studies or something like that to do it.
Okay, Pat, you had a question?
Yeah, didn't the contract include plantings? They were gonna establish wetland
Yep.
through plantings. Has that taken place?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, they plugged a lot
didn't
of
see it.
plugs out there.
okay.
Yeah, and I have a lot of photos that we have on record. Also, it's a really neat thing. The county actually, since they applied or gave us some money for the project, they also did a drone flyover. So I haven't seen that footage yet, but I'm excited to see that. So we'll have something on the website to kind of showcase the project. We'll put some of those photos on there of some of the plugs and stuff that they added, and
Mhm.
so we should have that, I would say, within the next month or two here. I'm not sure when they're going to get it turned around.
Okay, and hopefully we can get the flyover on our website.
Yes.
Yep, yep. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thanks, Chad.
Were there any extra costs?
No, actually, it came in well under budget. I believe that the original budget, we ended up, if you can remember, it was at 775, and then it came down to 620,000, I believe, and ended up around 500,000.
Okay.
So all in, I think we said 700,000.
Yeah, if you remember, there was
With
2
all
years of
engineering, yeah.
engineering and
Right.
grant applications, a lot of them which failed, but there was a lot of time that got put into that for up to 2 years.
Yeah,
So yeah, all in, I think, our all-in budget was still less than just the construction budget. So I think we performed pretty well.
it really is an interesting story because this happened without any controversy on National Park Service land. It came in under budget and on time. those sorts of things don't happen. And it wasn't, just a small little project, it was a big project. So, kudos to Land Studies and to you guys, Chad, because it really worked out well.
And I think it's great to mention the National Park Service, because they
Yeah.
were great partners to
They
work with.
were terrific partners.
They provided the architectural screening, that was worth $70,000 to us, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a really great partnership.
it really was. We should have more of those with them. Okay, new business. There's a H2O grant application that's possible. Here we go again with grants. But this is, Chad, I think you mentioned this, and then Deb, can we hear what, an overall
Yep, so I'm gonna,
explanation might be?
the H2O grants, there's two of those, and then we also have an ARF grant.
didn't know
First,
what
the H2O grants. The H2O are broken into small projects and large projects. Small is under 500,000, the large is over 500,000. Our strategy and what we're gonna be recommending to you guys is for the under 500,000 to use that for the Gettysburg Interloop Phase B project. We have $500,000 worth of stormwater improvements that are associated with that project. Right now, you guys are on the hook for for $70,000
We
of
promised
that.
70, yeah.
Yep, but we know that the storm drain alone, because of the boring under the railroad tracks and stuff, is gonna be over $300,000. And then we have all of the permeable pavers and the tree boxes and the green infrastructure, so we can easily get to $500,000 as a small project as a contribution towards that project. For the large project, the large H2O, it's over $500,000. We're suggesting to use that for the Stevens Run wall replacement project. Now, I did send an analysis out there a little bit about that, and there's actually two ways to look at that. Whenever we did the presentation a while ago, over a year ago, our estimate was 2.1 million in replacement and 570,000 in repairs, and about 500,000 for the engineering. That put us about $2.4 million for the project walls. One of Pat's comments was, well, if we're not doing this now, is this going to get projected into the future? So that's a good idea. We've got to make sure we include that. And then also, since post-COVID, we know that inflation happens, so we need to make sure that we're covering that inflation. So we took a look at all of those numbers, and we think that more realistic number is more like 3.7 million in today's dollars.
And explains for some people, so far, that 3.7 is for the repair, restoration, replacement of the existing Stevens/Tiber Run walls through the borough,
Right.
right? So
Yep.
keep going,
And-
but you're
yep,
gonna keep
yep,
going, I
yep.
know.
No,
It's
no,
going
that's-
up.
That was perfect. So what, assuming that we were gonna be spending our own money on this, we wanna try to repair as much as we can. Now, there's some walls that we just can't replace. We need to repair, like the one next to, the old ugly mug. We can't replace that wall because the whole building will come down, so we gotta repair that. So some of it is definitely just still gonna be repairs, but we were trying to be as frugal as possible, and if some of them fair deemed walls, we were suggesting repair instead of replacement, just because it's a little bit cheaper. So that's the cheaper of the two options at 3.7. There is a more expensive if we wanted to err on the side of replacing those fair walls, then that number would be 4.2 million. So we think we're into somewhere of 3.7 million to 4.2 million if we wanted to do all of the walls, all of the Stevens Run's walls in the entire Tiber.
Okay.
That also included some analysis on Culp's Run. So there's a pipe that goes underneath of the school district's property. It goes under right behind Reed Winery, and there's some other facilities there that also need some maintenance. So that includes maintenance to those facilities as well. That was the two streams that we looked at when we did this. So the H2O grant can fund from $500,000 up to $20 million. And this would be an eligible expense. The eligible expenses are those that involve acquisition, construction, improvement, expansion, or rehabilitation of all or part of a water supply, sewage disposal, stormwater system, or stormwater system which is owned and maintained by the applicant. So that's what's eligible. So we're throwing it out there to you guys now. There's a catch. Here's the catch. There's a 50% match for this H2O grant, the large H2O. The small H2O grant, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's a 15% match. We already have that covered. 15% of 500,000 is, I believe, 75,000. So the borough has already allocated 80,000, and the stormwater authorities are allocated 70,000. So we have the match more than covered. So that one's kind of a no-brainer. The large H2O grant application is the one that we would have to have some discussion on. If you guys want to apply for that, you would have to have a letter of commitment that you're going to fund the other 50%.
Now, just a quick question, because this is very interesting. Just using round figures, $4 million.
That's what I did in my head.
Right. So 4 million, we would have to match 50%, so we would have to come up with 2 million. Now, somehow, and I don't know, I was reading this, we can borrow that through Penvest?
Yes, Penvest would be the appropriate funding avenue should you want to take on debt.
Okay, and does anybody know what the interest rate is with Penvest? Or is this a conversation with the Penvest folks, or a Zoom call?
Once upon a time, this is pre-COVID, I remember it was 2%. Now, I don't know what it is
Now, with interest rates, I'd be surprised if it's not up, at least, this is tax exempt financing, I presume, so it's probably 5 to 6.
Tax exemption should be 3 and 4.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
2.2.
Yeah.
There you go.
It was- right. So, okay, this is, and one other thing, Pat.
Yeah.
Deborah, did somebody say this is due December?
21st.
December 21st. And you have 6 years to spend.
I was going to talk to you about.
Yeah, okay, well, we're on it, so, but since this is in your arena, go ahead.
I just applied for 2 of them,
Through
the H2Os.
Okay,
So I just did, in fact, signed the letter today and sent my grant writer the money to put the grants in.
uh-huh,
So the breakout, though, of the 4.2 million, if you did all in, or the 3.7, how much of that is engineering?
Let's see. It can't be more than 10%, right? Is that what you're going
Correct,
to?
can't be more than 10%.
So,
Because our engineer initial was like 20% and said, I'm out,
you can't do it,
you're
yeah,
limited to 10.
right. Interesting,
So you
okay.
have to back it back.
I think we were looking
I
at
thought you said 500,000.
600 to 700,000
Well,
if
that's-
you're going for the
that's
4.2.
15%.
Yeah, that's more than 10, yeah.
You only
Yeah,
get
usually
10.
engineering, they say, well, of course, it's a sliding scale,
You're
right?
allowed-
The
You're allowed
larger-
5%, you're allowed 5% administration fee and 10% engineering.
Right.
That's it,
Mhm.
Right.
period. But your administration has to cover inside and out. So if you have internal administration.
And project
And
administration.
project
right,
administration, you're
right.
allowed 5%.
Mhm,
And 10% engineering cap.
mhm.
So just to let you know. So we just
Okay.
applied for 3 grants, which is the one from Adams County through the COG. We applied for just shy of $500,000. The small water treatment H2O, 487,000, and a large one for 1.7.
Mhm.
So the difference is you need matching funds.
Right.
And one of the things I'm here tonight to discuss, which I talked to Charles about, is can you use the recovery money that the borough has to loan you that money internally as your matching funds, rather than going out to Penvest?
I have that same question on my list here, but why would you just loan just straight out?
Well, no, I don't know if
Get
you
the
can give
grant?
it, I don't know from the technicality of based on, what is it? It's the ARPA, whether or not
You will
whether or
not,
not you can transfer the funds from the municipality itself, which received the recovery funds outright through the state's, $6.5 billion that was given to the
Mhm.
counties,
Mhm.
or whether you'd have to actually loan it to them.
You will not be able to use federal dollars to match federal dollars.
Well, this is state dollars.
H2O state.
So one of the things I was here for,
Mhm.
which I can go now or go later, was to become educated,
Uh-huh.
okay? Because I know we need the stormwater done. It's been overdue for years. I'm not disputing that. Never disputing that. I'm just trying to find out, A, from a longevity standpoint, in the initial outlay, I mean, obviously, the fees were based on a certain formula for total capital expenditures of all the different projects that were known at the time. I don't know what that amount was. Was it 5 million? Was it 10 million? What was it? And then capitalized based on the number of widgets, residents,
Right.
or landowners divided up to determine a formula for a fee based on front footage, whatever it might be. Okay, I don't know how that was formulated. Okay, I couldn't find that. That might be on the website, but I couldn't find the formula. And that may be in Chad's head. Okay.
I think it is, but
The question is,
on the website.
in the initial, when this was first started, was it thought to do a bond issue back in the day, a tax exempt bond? Because you have the authority to do bond issues.
Oh, yes, sir. Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, it's been how long since Stevens Run and Culps and all them have been repaired or replaced? 100 years? 80, 50, 70? Whatever it might be, whatever its life expectancy. So right now, we're receiving fees as landowners, and the question is, if the overall project was X and we had Y number of contributors, is there a way to capitalize that over a 30-year bond issue that gives a finite amount in there, plus you get other grants and everything, you can apply for additional funding,
Mhm.
okay? But is there a better way to do the mousetrap to make sure that you have sustainability, number one, okay? That the fees aren't gonna go up, and you can capitalize it over a long period of time, because I'm not gonna be here for 30 more years, most likely, okay? Some of us won't be here 30 years more, and then the new generation that takes over the businesses and the ownership, they then contribute at the same time, so it's not front-loaded. So, I had talked to Charles about the recovery money, which you have, what, 3.1?
Less than that now, but.
Okay, but approximately 3,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what was originally.
Can we utilize some of that to help offset or get this other grant that Chad's talking to you about, which, you know, we applied for it just this morning.
Mhm.
And I don't know who your grant writer is. Do you do that in-house?
I think we
Yeah.
For this one, we're doing in-house.
Yeah.
yes.
It's
Okay,
in-house.
okay, I was just gonna say, our grant writer, they charge minimal to submit it, so including preparing the resolution. So, can you use that for your match, or can the borough, through the recovery funds, actually loan this authority their own money? Because Penn Bus is gonna take you an extracted period of time
Oh,
to know that
right.
you haven't. Now, you may be able to go after that, but could you, and I was gonna bring up I'm glad to see that on there, could the recovery money be pledged as your match?
That's all a possibility, but that becomes a borough council issue. And I don't know the borough council budget, but my guess would be that everybody has certain ideas about how to use that money. And
Well, I mean,
I'm happy to get in
Yeah.
line, because we have a huge project.
in all fairness, one of the initial questions when I think it was PML was running those seminars right after ARPA was enacted, and one of the first questions we asked was, because there's a clear reference to sewer.
Right.
So, well, what does sewer mean?
Which sewer?
And my understanding is
Right.
that we can use it for stormwater projects.
Yeah, the Treasury Department's been more explicit in their definition, and now stormwater is specifically mentioned.
Also, public safety is a criteria, and stormwater, overcharged stormwater is a public safety issue.
Oh, absolutely.
So our strategy has been, in my opinion, that we've used the ARPA funds primarily to replace those positions that we had cut, with the understanding that, as Charles was alluding to just a few minutes ago, we can't use ARPA funds to go after federal grants.
Right.
So as we're looking at, that's allowed us, he hates it when I would call it a shell game with the federal
It is.
government, that's what it is, right? So instead of using taxpayer dollars to pay for the positions of police officers, some public works employees that we normally would.
Right.
We hold on to those taxpayer dollars, the local dollars, to leverage for Baltimore Street, for Washington Street with the stormwater, all the issues we have there. So, I mean, this would be a large chunk, but at the same time, it's almost like a shorter path to the same end.
Right.
Because the difficulty with ARPA funds is they are one-time funds.
That's it.
So while we're using them to pay these salaries, the reality is, in a roundabout way, we're using the monies that are then left over for one-time expenditures like this. And this is a very dramatic one that, you know, we talked, and I'm sure Chad could speak to how we got to that fee, but one of the issues that's come up is that there's a big difference between the credits that we have to obtain and then our failing infrastructure, which gives us, like, none of these projects will count towards the credits.
Right.
You know, they're not gonna look
No.
kindly upon armoring
Armoring,
street walls, but we have
yeah.
no options.
Yeah.
You know, you can't return it to, well, I guess you theoretically could, but we're not gonna return it to some sort of angled bank, you know. So it's a reasonable idea.
Unless
I'm
the
not
Civil War
sure-
Trust wants to buy everything. But anyway.
Yeah, you don't see that
So,
because they do.
The other thing is, I was going through, and thank you for, Ms. English, for guiding me towards this packet.
Stack of stuff.
But in some of the audits, I mean, it doesn't really mention the grants that are, the grants that have been purchased, obtained, and, because when you look at some of the audits on the surface, it doesn't paint a great picture.
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, over 3 years, it says that 37% went to admin and 43% went to the contribution to the borough for repairs. Well, it doesn't mention that you did Culp's one for 500 and some thousand. So when. the
That'll be
chair-
in the next audit.
Should be.
It will be.
I'm telling you, I mean, it should be.
It will be.
Stuff should be.
Yeah, because
Because
this is here.
Because if you look at the surface, it's saying, well, I'm spending as much in admin as I'm doing repairs, in theory.
Right.
Which you're not, because you're getting some grant money and that's not in here and things of that. So just, it would help, I think, to explain the situation that it's actually being utilized correctly.
Mhm.
But my thing is that
It
is there
is,
a way,
right.
way to get a long-term type of bond to spread it out over probably 2 to 3 generations, so it's not up front-loaded. And then secondly, taking the monies that you have, some of it, to help these matching funds, which I was gonna bring up about the 3 grants, which you already have.
Excellent.
Your your comments are well taken, because these are things that we're all, thinking about at some point.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to mesh it all in, because theoretically, and really, we have 2 separate groups. We have the Borough Council and we have this authority. And there's push and pull on both sides. But even, just as my own opinion, if just some of that money could be given to us as we pursue this as for a match or so forth, then, you're right, money is fungible. This is fungible.
The big- I
And
know the
it's
big
not a bad
issue-
word, it's just, but, it's used different ways for different things. And we want to leverage as much of it as we can where we're allowed to leverage. Pat?
Okay, well, I appreciate all the discussion. I'm trying to get some simple answers if they're out there. We talked about these ARF funds before, and Wes said rightfully so, I believe, that the borough has it, and they have uses for it. So I don't think we ought to be looking at using the borough's ARF funds. I think we are an eligible entity, and we ought to be going after our own ARF funds. So that's the first question. Yeah.
Well, I think that
Can
ship
we-
has sailed, hasn't it?
No, it hasn't. There's still money available. There's still money available for water projects.
From the county.
From the
you mean?
county.
County.
Not the
there is.
county, yeah,
State.
wherever it is.
Yeah.
The county has
source.
funds in reserve, but I mean, you have to be.
That's
a-
what the ARF is, that's
Yeah.
the Adams
Yeah,
County.
You'd have to be a municipality. to-
There's different buckets, though. And there's a whole separate bucket just for water projects. The borough, maybe if they included us in it, or GMA could go for it, but that's the question. Is there money out there that we as an authority can go after separate of the borough?
Good question. I mean,
So
I don't know that for sure. I would look.
I'm
to
not looking for an
administration.
answer here.
Right,
I'm
right.
looking for somebody to be responsible to go check it out in a
Mhm.
thorough fashion. So who would that be?
Well, what I think, and I mentioned this before you got here, just on the side, one of the things we have to do with this application is we need to have a meeting. We need to sit down, a separate meeting just on this, just to talk about what the possibilities are. Where can we leverage this thing?
Yeah.
You know,
That's what-
how much can we get from what pot?
That's,
You know,
that's
and
what,
what's
what is-
possible, because again,
well,
the
that's what
borough
I'm
has
trying to
committed.
do
Yeah.
here is that a possibility? I mean, we have to establish if it
Well,
is a possibility or not.
It may be, I don't think this is the time to talk about it.
I'm
I
not saying that,
think-
all I'm looking for is somebody responsible to go check it out.
And Chad, question for you.
Hmm?
The county funds they have available has to be in by 21st of this month,
Next Monday.
next Monday.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
So the 20th.
7 days from now.
21st, yes, the
That's-
21st.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we just submitted that one
Mhm.
for the other portion that we needed.
Yep.
So I say we're doing a joint project with another municipality
Mhm.
to help. We're the matching money.
Okay,
So, but you don't have that luxury.
yeah, unless you want to help match.
But that's the 21st, so you'd have to get that in this week.
Yeah, and that part of it,
And that's a minimum of 250, minimum. of
250 minimum, and it doesn't really say a max.
It's minimum.
You're right, it doesn't really say a max, but it just says a minimum of 250. But
Right.
that's the other thing that is on your agenda there, the ARF, right? So there's two different acronyms. There's ARPA, that's the
Right.
H2O ones, and then there's ARF, is the Items Response and Recovery Fund.
Right.
The borough would be the applicant on that one
Right.
for the same project, Gettysburg Interloop. At the end of the day, it's funding some of the same things, that we're trying to get that storm drain replaced, trying to get those permeable pavers in to finish that project out.
And that's non-matching.
And that one does not need a match, yep. But again, the Gettysburg Interloop project is not an issue with the match, right? We got that
No,
covered.
No, that's.
So the small H2O grant under 500,000 for the Gettysburg Interloop, and the ARF, the small H2O grant would be applied for by the Stormwater Authority through the borough for the, under 500,000, and that would take a 15% match, which we have covered. The ARF has no match, so that one's easy. So those are, I feel like those are kind of no-brainers. It's just that large one, the one that's over 500,000 that we want to potentially use for the Stevens Run wall replacement and maintenance project.
Right, that's it.
That one, if we're looking at $4 million, we need to come up with $2 million in a match. And I agree with Mike that we need to have a meeting, but I'm looking at the calendar, the only other meeting that we have to make a decision if we want to apply for that is again on December 12th. That application's due on the 21st. So we're gonna have to have at least a good indication here, leaving here today, if you want to put together that application, because it takes a little bit of time. It's not overly hatefully difficult to do, but it does take some time. We know we're gonna have to put some cost estimates together and some homework to get put into that application.
Just to keep clarity, you're talking, there are two sources, right?
Sorry.
ARF,
Yep, it's county.
okay.
Right.
And the other one is
And then there's two that are for the H2O ARPA.
ARPA.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are two types.
American
Recovery.
Recovery. So that, the H2O has a large and a small. The small is under 500,000, the large is over 500,000, and it can go up to 20 million.
So up there, if you're talking HTO grant application, are you talking ARPA?
Yes, both of the H2O grant applications use the acronym ARPA.
Okay, that would be helpful to have our terms standard.
Okay, to keep this thing moving then.
One other
go ahead, I'm sorry.
question, if you don't
Any
mind.
question? Yeah.
The timeframe would be important to understand with those
small
ARPA
one.
funds. So we have
Okay.
through 2026 to expend those funds. When we're talking about committing possibly as much as $2 million, my question would be if that can be expended over that period of time, because certainly the construction could take place over multiple years. Is there a
You have to disperse
restriction?
the funds by December 31st of 2026 for these grants.
Correct, but,
Right.
so my question is there an expectation from those funds that they expend? You know, oftentimes we run things have to occur within a single year. Or could we be talking about spending this in, 24, 25, and 26 and spread that match out over that time,
You can phase it.
Might be more realistic. Because I know that what's going on in Charles's mind too is when we talk about crossing, I think it's $750,000. with ARPA is the line of the, when the accounting starts to go.
That's right.
You need to do a single audit.
Single, yeah,
Yeah.
single
Federal
federal
audit
audit.
requires an
750,
audit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I saw on the application I looked at, you had 6 years to spend the money, which would be 20.
That's from,
That's from when the legislation
2020.
passed. Everything has to be spent by December 31st, 2026.
They started at 2020.
Yes,
Right.
2026, it has to be expended.
That
It
changed.
wasn't,
So-
isn't spent by the
so
last
that
day in
big 4 million,
26,
If you
easily
don't think that
returned.
whole thing can be completed by then, in 3 years basically, then you might want to phase it in phases and go for just part of the project.
And it can be,
Yeah.
it can be complete. I think that wouldn't be hard to do. We could get the entire project done at once. And there's different schools of thought on that, right? There's the economy of scale where, we're talking about engineering, is it 600,000 or is it 700,000? Well, it's 600 if you do it all at once. 700,000 if you put this thing out to bid 3 different times in 3 different phases and 3 different contract administrations, right? So there is some savings in getting it all done at once.
So, that's
Yes,
all
there
I
is.
have.
Well, thank you. You helped grease the sprockets on this machine, yeah. And, some of these things we've known about, but you brought some good information, so thank you.
And if, I don't know, for the grant for the big one, if you need any insight to it, I'm more than happy to give you my contact on it.
Yeah, Pat, you have.
When we originally
Thanks, Dan.
started talking about, well, I wasn't here for the original one because I'm still a newbie, but we talked about the borough doesn't necessarily have responsibility for all these aspects of the project, the various locations. The landowner has some, so.
And we aren't 100% sure yet, I guess, is the skinny.
That's, well, that's, I was gonna say, that needs to be determined because that could be another possible source of a match. If the landowner has responsibility to shore up whatever's protecting their property, that could be a possible match source.
But I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
I'm not holding my breath, but
I would-
I think if we're gonna do our fiduciary responsibility, we need to check it out.
Oh, yeah, and that's why he's here.
Well, and to that point,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Child basketball, see.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Thanks, appreciate it.
to that point, I think there's a little bit of murkiness as to, the various sections of these walls and what the borough in the past may have assumed responsibility for. To the extent that the authority is going to be taking on a repair, I mean, you've just inserted yourself into the
Right.
position of permanently being responsible for it. And if you're reconstructing it, then you're hopefully doing it well, you don't have to mess with it for a while. But it's not necessarily clear to me that this is a municipal responsibility completely.
Right, and I think, Pat, you're
If you wanna
absolutely
take
right.
it on.
Right, we have to solve that question first. And again, I say, we need to have a meeting and just drill down in each of these issues and determine, okay, what's going on, where are we, and what is the best path forward, given the history of this stream and the present condition of some of these walls. So, Deb, I'm looking to you and Charles to call a meeting and to get, everybody can be invited, just it's a works, I don't know what the term is, we're not making any decisions, we're just researching and talking. And, invite everybody who wants to be there. And make it a couple-hour meeting and talk about these things.
Is it safe to say that, straw vote type of a thing, we should continue to put effort into this? I'm not seeing anybody saying, absolutely not, I don't want anything to do with this H2O funds. I want to make sure that we're all of our time's limited, our resources are limited. I want to make sure that we're not heading down the wrong path if we're going to start putting time in. Either way, we need to find out if we own this thing. There's going to be another item on the agenda coming up with a GMA interceptor where we're going to be talking about a similar topic. I just want to make sure, again, our next meeting won't be till the 12th of December, and then this grant application's due by the 21st, so we won't have a whole lot of time after that meeting. So I want to make sure that we're at least heading the right, like, we're going to continue to have this conversation, we're going to continue to, Deb's going to start putting together the application, we're going to have the cost estimates, we're going to be ready to go for it if we do want to decide to do it.
Is there anybody, I mean, this is time to discuss it.
I share the same concerns that Pat does with the ownership issue, because if you do reconstruct it or you build this, you're essentially accepting ownership, and the government, in theory, exists in perpetuity. So that's a bit of a problem. Now, on the other side of that, when you have a wall failure, it'll be very interesting to try to hold a property owner accountable for building that. So if we have an opportunity to potentially fix what is a catastrophic problem that we know about and pay for half of it or less, that would probably be an opportunity we need to take advantage of. So I would prepare for that.
Yeah, who would you see paying the other half, the landowner or us?
I would be very surprised if you're going to have landowners lining up to pay this. It's just not going to happen.
I don't see it.
So, I mean, I kind of look at it the kind of way that we look at a street. I don't want to pay for the whole thing if we don't have to. If the federal government, through our tax dollars, will fund part of it.
Yeah.
It's like every other federal program we deal with, right? We're trying to bring as many of those dollars back home as we can.
Well, do the property owners pay for their repairs on our sidewalks?
That's the analogy.
That's-
I mean,
that's-
Is it the street
That's
or is
an
it the
interesting
sidewalk?
analogy.
Right,
and
no,
and one of
the practical reality to that, Pat, is the answer to your question is yes. There's never been the political will to make it happen.
Yes.
And that itself has caused a lot of
That's the
issues
issue.
recently, because my father would say, "No good deed
Goes unpunished, right.
So as Columbia Gas or any other entity has redone sidewalks because it was necessary to relocate their utilities, it seems that more and more property owners and residents feel emboldened that it's someone else's responsibility to do that. And the problem is now we have done large stretches. I mean, it happened to me. They did almost the whole other side of the street. I got like 1 square, which
Right.
is fine. It's my responsibility to fix. But it has made people feel more difficult. And John could speak to when he was manager and before that, when we have failures in the sidewalks. Wow, it becomes suddenly, well, this will put me out of house and home because it's a $10,000 expenditure. Candidly, as a property owner that's younger, not like the rest of us have $10,000 sitting around either to throw into a sidewalk.
Exactly.
But it's just one of those things of having a property where you're in town. The difference is that if the stream wall collapses, it's just a lot more catastrophic, I think, for everyone else downstream than the sidewalk is.
And where would past practices fall? If I have a wall in my backyard and it collapses, and I know that it collapsed 10 years ago in my neighbor's backyard and the borough stepped in and fixed it, why isn't the borough gonna step in and fix mine?
Well, and that somewhat speaks to the issue that I think the authority really needs to get a grip on sooner than later. I mean, I had sent you case law on this sort of issue.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I mean, there's nothing exactly on point, but it seems fairly clear to me that the borough is not necessarily responsible for this stuff unless at some point it chose to assume responsibility, and that's what's unclear.
Well,
If the borough went above and beyond what it may have had to do, and I'm not talking anything that anyone in this room ever did, but way back when.
Well, one of us in this room repaired a hell of a lot of footage of the walls
Right.
in this town
Sure.
in the past 29 years.
Yeah.
Because every time there was a wall failure, the borough fixed it.
Yeah, I think
There were never really any questions or conversations about it.
Yeah, I agree totally with John. I mean, I've been around here a while too. The borough did a lot of work in the Stevens Run / Tiber over the years. And I think historically, based on what we can pull out of the minutes, it alludes to the fact that there's, and I think the term, a moral
Yeah.
responsibility, right? By, well, a councilman lawyer way back when to say, we ought to be doing this as the borough. And I think when you look over time, what actually has been done, the borough has taken responsibility when there was a problem.
Back in the 70s, early 80s, we had what they called Title III money, which I believe was all federal money. I'm getting older, my memory's not as good, I gotta start taking Prevagen. But we used that Title III money was set aside, and that was to fix the bottom of a lot of places of the Tiber, but it also built a lot of walls. Most of the walls that you see in the Tiber that are cement block, that was Title III money. The poured concrete, they were failures that we fixed. And there'll be no records of engineering because we used Leroy Angel because he was a hell of a concrete contractor.
He sure was.
And
He sure was.
he knew how to build walls, and if you don't believe me, try to take some of his walls down. You'll find out how well they are. But I don't, in theory, I agree that some of this cost should be borne by the property owner. I don't see it happening, because for the 30 years I've been around, over 30 years I've been around here, the borough has always fixed them, every time.
I just want to be clear, I'm not taking a position, I'm saying we need the answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, because I'm still new at this, although I did hear secondhand at my house about certain of these
Well,
issues
the
over the years. but-
the other issues that I've ran into over the years working with some of these walls is, if this brown line is the wall, some of the property pins are on this side of the brown line, and some of the property lines are on this side of the brown line. So if my property pin's on this side of the brown line and the brown line's a wall,
Yeah.
the wall's clearly not
It's like
mine.
all the alleys you fixed up,
Yeah.
nobody knew where the lines were, and people had come out into it, but, yeah, those are all, I guess, somewhat related, but I just think we need to have an answer, and, whether it comes through our fee, somebody in the borough is gonna pay for it, if we decide one way, if we're responsible.
Yeah, and I think as we're thinking this through, there's certainly some properties that maybe they could afford the wall, but there's gonna be properties where the wall is gonna cost more than the property itself, right?
Right,
There's
yep.
some places where,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
why what Wes is saying, it's just not realistic to expect that somebody's gonna, we're not talking about even a $5,000 or $10,000 sidewalk. Whenever that
We're
wall,
talking
some of these walls
about-
go in,
yeah.
we're talking about $100,000 fix, and nobody's gonna have $100,000 just sitting there waiting for this to
That's right.
happen, so.
So-
And then there's also, I wanted to make sure I note that there's, logistically, there's kind of two different types of walls that we're talking about. Some are just walls that are freestanding with earth behind them, and they're fairly easy to get to. Some of them actually have a structure right on top of it, and that makes it a little bit different in my mind. I think a wall that is somebody's foundation to their building should be looked at a little bit different than a wall that's just there holding back earth. It's a little bit of a different thing.
Both of them.
So I hear generally two things. One, we have a wall ownership issue, which we have to decide. We gotta make a decision. And the other thing is, we have these grants, the possible grants. So Deb, I'm asking you, and maybe through Charles, to try to call a meeting here in the next 10 days, so we can, Adam needs to be there. John, if you're available, please be there, and anyone else on the board, Chad, you gotta be there. Robbie, if you can make it, please, just to hear for a while, anyway.
Do we have a sunshine law issue?
Well, I
issue for you?
don't know, but, I mean, we're not making decisions, we're talking about these things. This is not a decision-making.
Just one more thing,
I would
is it?
suggest advertising.
If you're
You think so?
deliberating,
Okay.
If you're deliberating.
I
All right.
I guess a more basic question in my mind, are we the decision makers or is the borough government? Because we could be setting precedent for other similar issues that the borough faces, which we've already mentioned, sidewalks, alleys, there's all kinds of things.
Well, my initial thought on this is that this is clearly a carve-out. Our job is stormwater. Our job is not sidewalks. Now, maybe Harry Eastman has an interest in that and seeing where we're going, but I would hope that we could identify from the battlefield down to Rock Creek, that this is our responsibility, and we're just talking about the walls and that. So, but again, I turn to the lawyer to say, answer Pat's question.
Well, the other aspect of it, and we've already, to play devil's advocate, is this really stormwater?
For the counties.
Oh, it's stormwater.
Oh.
Yeah, it's stormwater.
Yes.
Okay,
I don't know that that needs
just
to
any other
take a
comments?
Council motion or
Do,
anything.
do people agree that we need to, and if we have to advertise, great. I
Steve,
don't have a
you have
problem
a
with that.
navigable stream according to the Army Corps of
Find a
Engineers.
time, we'll advertise it.
Just
Yeah.
telling you, when you did the flood maps. and everything.
So, Deb, if I put this in your court,
That was their terminology.
you know, and Charles's court to get moving on this, I appreciate it. Any other comments or questions about these particular issues? Not hearing any, let's move on to the MS4 permit updates.
I can be real quick
Yep,
and
please.
precise with this. We did submit the annual report, and DEP accepted and approved the annual report. I don't want to make light of it, too light of it, because there was a lot of great work that went into it.
Yeah.
Deborah's done trainings, we did inspections, outfall inspections, and BMP inspections, so, but bottom line is that we are in good standings with DEP for another year.
So, this is our report card every year,
Every year.
and do I say that we passed with flying colors? There were
Passed
no.
with flying colors, yep.
Okay.
The only thing that we really made a promise to them that we don't have done yet is the stormwater ordinance, which we're gonna be discussing a little bit later.
Okay. Any questions about that? So, good work, Deb and Charles and Chad, thank you. All right, stormwater management ordinance.
So we're in the process of writing a new ordinance, and your current ordinance has, under 800 square feet, you kind of do nothing, and then over 800 square feet, you go to a full stormwater management, site plan, is what it's defined as.
Now, this is building. This is new building? What-
New impervious area. Anytime
Okay.
you propose
Okay.
new impervious area.
So, if someone's putting in a driveway,
Yep, that would be considered new
Okay,
impervious
all right.
area, yep. Or a new shed or a new addition to their house. There is another potential category that I would like for, to bring to your attention for consideration. So, and let me go back to the reason why we came up with 800 square feet, that was the Planning Commission, Gettysburg Borough Planning Commission that came
Okay.
up with that 800 square feet. They have approval authority over land developments. They see a lot of land developments, and they came up with 800 square feet because that was, somebody can put in a two-car garage and stay under 800 square feet. That was kind of the rule of thumb is what they were using for that square footage. But a lot of our neighboring municipalities have what we call a simplified approach. So it allows you to go up to 5,000 square feet, and some of them can go up to even 10,000 square feet, but for all intensive purposes, the discussion I'd like to have is a 5,000 square foot category, where you do what we call a simplified approach. It's still consistent with DEP's ordinance. It's not going to change anything in the eyes of DEP. In fact, DEP will allow you to pave an acre of land without any stormwater management. If you can also do that and keep your disturbance under an acre. They allow 43,000 square feet. So nobody thinks that's a good idea, right? We think it should be 800 or 5,000. That's the numbers that we're talking about. Do you guys want to allow a 5,000 square foot category where they can do simplified approach? And some of the caveats that would go with that is you could allow a simplified approach where it still is required to be done by an engineer. You want what the townships of the world, right? The suburban and the rural areas have. They allow these simplified approaches to be done by a property owner, or they usually use a contractor. Many of them actually end up still getting an engineer to do it. But simplified approach is allowed for 5,000 and up to 10,000 in most townships. It makes the calculations a little bit more simpler. It makes the process a little bit simpler, but it still makes you have to have a plan. And the level of effort that goes into that plan can be defined on whether or not they need a professional to prepare it or not. So as we're coming up with this new ordinance, we need to have that discussion again. And we don't have to belabor the point tonight. What I could do maybe is follow up with an email and just get you guys thinking. We did promise DEP that we're gonna continue to work on the new model ordinance. It's time for us to get a new ordinance. DEP does have a new ordinance. There's plenty of other things I'm gonna be talking to you guys about, as we go through this process. But that's the one thing that, just right up front, our exemption, where do you start regulating stormwater management? Any thoughts for tonight, or do you wanna bring it back next month? Go ahead.
We're going back to Act 167, and the county has a model ordinance, right?
Yep.
Okay, so, but we're not like Manalapan Township, we're an MS4, so
Yep.
when we're having this discussion, you know, it'd be good, I believe, to give us more urban kind of settings to compare to.
Mhm.
And examples for
Sure.
some
See
examples
what-
as well.
See what Hanover and Littlestown and.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that would be helpful, at least for me, to try to wrap my brain around exactly what this means.
Yeah, I guess that'd be the other question. Does MS4 have any bearing on that ordinance?
So MS4, the acronym starts to show up more and more in
Right.
these new ordinance. There is a new requirement that you must consider green infrastructure and low impact development. So we're going to use those words a lot as we start talking through this new ordinance, but you have to only consider it. And the language is very
It's vague.
frilly
Yeah.
about whether or not you actually have to do it. So as long as a developer considers it. Now, I can see it being a conflict with some of our sourdough stuff where a developer might say, hey, I'm supposed to be, according to your stormwater ordinance, doing low impact development, but your sourdough requires me to put curbs and sidewalks in. So low impact development would suggest I don't put curbs in and I let the water run into a grass line swale. So we're gonna have some of those little bit of conflicts as we move forward. But yes, the MS4 is starting to work its way into those new ordinances. So I'll take a look at some examples, send that to your way.
That would be helpful.
And I'll send you some more information on those categories, and we'll start to see if we
Yep.
want to define that or redefine our current level of 800 square feet.
And we can read these quietly
Mhm.
to ourselves and
Mhm.
try to absorb it all. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions on that stormwater ordinance? Okay. Brame Alley Channel Wall Replacement, Chad.
So, like
And
I
the
said earlier,
GMA Interceptor, the sewer, yeah.
so we were going to be talking about the wall again.
Oh, yeah.
Gettysburg Municipal Authority is in the process of designing an extension to their sewer interceptor. They already did half of it through the borough. They're going to be doing the other half, starting construction hopefully mid-year next year. When they do that, they're going to be coming up Bream Alley. That's the one right behind Tanya's, the Mexican restaurant.
Can you give at least me an idea of where this is going to start and where this is going to, I assume it's going to end at the sewer plant, but,
So they already did it from the sewer plant up around to Water Street.
okay.
I believe they got past the bridge on Stevens
Yeah,
Run.
they're up,
Yeah, they're strapped.
like halfway up Water Street between Stratton and then Carlisle, somewhere in that ballpark.
So they need to pick it
Okay.
up from there, go pass through the college, where we just did the stream
Right.
cleanup. They're gonna be coming past the Creekside Soak Mill Apartments, through the front yard of the old Mead School,
Right.
Federal Point
Right.
Inn, and then crossing over and going up Bream Alley. That's the one we were gonna be
Right.
talking about here on
Right.
the
Okay.
agenda.
That's what I just.
And going over to High Street, and I believe they go a little bit past High Street and they're in, that's kind of the end of what's called the interceptor.
Okay.
And at that point, it's just collection lines.
Does that tie into the pumping station there at High Street?
I don't know this, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
But what it means to us, the Stormwater Authority, is whenever they're going up Bream Alley, we know that that's one of those walls that's in that fair condition where some of it needs replaced, it
Right.
needs to be lengthened a little bit where it makes the bend around. And we're only talking about the Bream Alley side. We're not talking about the other, what we're gonna call the Togus walls.
Right.
That one, we think is far enough away from this project that we don't have to touch it at this point. The side on Bream Alley, one good thing, one variable that we think we can take off the shelf is we most likely have responsibility, ownership of that wall. That's within our alley right of way. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. The question that I have for you guys, and the thing that we need to do if we want to move forward, is we think that the municipal authority is going to have to replace some of that wall. We don't know the exact extent, but we don't think that they can get their project done without doing some replacement of it. We think that the total wall replacement is a little over $200,000. I'm throwing out a suggestion that maybe we get the entire thing replaced while the municipal authority is doing this, and try to do some type of a shared approach. So just for discussion purposes, if it's a $200,000 wall, Stormwater Authority pays for $100,000, the Gettysburg Municipal Authority pays for the other $100,000, and we get a new wall. So whenever they're done, we're all done with this: new utilities, new street alley paving, new wall. We never have to touch that side again.
I guess I have two questions. One, can we use one of these grants?
So yeah, so if we
And the other question is bridge. There's a bridge there, and that would be what? Springs Avenue Bridge. Are they near that or touching that or anything with that?
they're going to go underneath of not the Springs Alley Bridge. They're going to go underneath of what's a box in front of the old Mead School, Federal Point Inn.
Right.
And then they're going to go underneath of the box on Racehorse Alley.
Okay, so they're really deep, and they're going through the parking lot of the dollar store side of things? They coming up the alley? I'm just
They're
trying
going
to,
right
where's
down-
the pipe
they're going-
going?
Right down
Right down
Bream
the
Alley.
middle, right down the alley.
Right down the middle of the alley.
And they're gonna be on
Yeah.
the wall side, close to our wall, because in
Right.
that same alley, my 5 pounds of, that I always like to use,
Right.
it's gas, electric,
Everything's
water, everything else is in
Right.
that same alley. So they have to be tied up against our wall, which is part of the reason why we
I'll
don't.
tell you right now, and I don't mean to be a pain about this, but if they're gonna do that, they should replace the whole wall. Because they're gonna, I mean, if you're talking about all those utilities there, I mean, that's gonna be undermining that wall.
Yeah, so the way that it's shaped, it starts to be a pipe, they get closer and
Right.
closer to the wall. So it would be a stretch to say that half of that wall, they're gonna affect. The back half, they certainly are. So that's one of those things, while they're replacing that back half, should we do it all? And especially, so the other savings would be, if there's different ways to share the expense here, we can go through the specifics then once you guys make a decision if you want to do this, but what I would suggest is that we can take care of the design and permitting, but we let them administer the construction through their contractor. So that allows, that takes some of the expense off
Right.
of contract
Like
administration.
we did on South Street.
Yes.
Right.
And they're gonna be
Let
there
them
anyway.
pay for things we can't pay for.
And I'd have to believe if I was a contractor and I know that I don't have to worry about trying to be delicate and sensitive around that wall, I can just take it out and put it back in when I'm done.
Gotta save money.
I would really, I would like that if I was a contractor. So I think at the end of the day, it's the same people that are paying you're paying your bills through the Stormwater Authority, you're paying the bills through the GMA. So anyways, that's the idea, and you were talking about the grant, so I was seeing this a lot like our Culps Run stream restoration. We just talked about those HTO grant. If we get that money, then this is free for both GMA and the sewer authority. But if we don't get the money, I'm suggesting that we continue to push forward with at least this part of the wall. There's no doubt that we own it. This is the opportunity while they're coming through the sewer line. So that, again, it's kind of one of those things where we ought to take advantage of the opportunity whether we get the grant or not with this one.
Yeah, because we're gonna have a new wall attached to an old wall. If we say, no, we're not gonna touch it.
Right.
We're gonna have an antiquated wall and a brand-new wall, and that's not gonna work, because it needs to come as, if I'm thinking about this correctly, from the bridge at Springs Avenue all the way up until it makes the turn and it's up, so.
Yeah, and if they put in a new piece of wall where the bend is,
Yeah.
there would have to be some type of a concrete, I don't even logistically know how you'd go back into the old wall and then back into the bridge abutment. So it would be odd
Yeah.
if we left a piece of that old masonry wall in there.
Pat?
Is the wall an issue because they have to replace the utilities? GMA?
Half of the wall we're talking about is
It's on
an
our
issue
list,
for
Pat.
them. Yeah.
I know, but it seems to me if the wall is an issue because they have to replace the
Right.
utilities, they should be doing
Well,
the wall.
that's,
Is
I'd like to push as much as we could, and I know everybody, different folks in the community are paying for different things, I get it. But our job here is stormwater, and to use the money the most responsible way possible, I would try to push as much as I could at GMA to replace the wall. You know, and I understand it's starting out away from the wall and then it's going towards the wall through
Right.
that parking lot.
Right.
Yep, yep. So whatever portion that is, I think we need to negotiate how much of that would be ours. I'm not saying that we're out of this completely, I know better, but I'm telling you, it's because of their pipe that's causing us to move this up on the whole,
Oh, yeah.
schedule.
Yeah.
So I
But
think
we
they should
wouldn't-
take
we
more
wouldn't touch it
responsibility.
right now if it weren't for that.
No,
Yeah, I think we would try to-
especially not that part.
Yeah, we would try to buy a few more years
Yeah,
Right.
if it
absolutely.
wasn't for this
Right.
project, yeah.
So I'm with you, and I think it's a
Okay.
matter of negotiation.
Violent
So-
agreement.
Yeah, violent agreement.
So it sounds like we got nods saying let's continue forward with this discussion. The only thing, and this doesn't have to happen today, it could happen next month, but by January, if we want to do this, we would like to start that permitting process. They want to start construction mid-year of next year. That's the rough.
Wow,
A
okay.
more
so-
positive statement is, it sounds like we're in consensus that GMA ought to be doing this.
As much as possible, that's right.
That would be what I would consider our negotiating.
So you mean even the design permitting?
Yeah, the whole thing. The whole thing is happening because they have to replace a
Pushing the
pipe.
issue.
So I want to be clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if, half of the wall is an issue for them. Half of it's not an issue. I'm suggesting that we get the whole wall replaced at the same time, do it all, the whole thing at the same time.
Well,
So-
well, hold it, you're making an
I want to make sure
assumption.
that, I want to make sure that they might say, okay, if this is all on us, then we'll just repair the piece that we're gonna damage and we'll leave the old piece in there. I'm being,
Yeah, I think the assumption is that half of the wall is ours, and I think, at least I'll speak for myself, I think more than half of the wall is theirs. In fact, they're causing the whole thing, and I'm sitting here scratching my head thinking,
I think.
we would not have done this section without, I mean, it's moved up on the schedule.
so.
And so, I mean, there's a cost to that.
Yeah, and-
I mean, it's for us, because we would have to start reallocating funds, and I'm not so sure that, that would be the highest and best use of our funds. I mean, not that it's not a worthy thing, don't get me wrong, but it's not number one on the list. And so,
Right, and the early analysis that our structural engineers did, they showed that the design permitting would cost around 35,000 out of the total. We were saying that the Stormwater Authority's portion should be about 100,000, and the Gettysburg Municipal Authority's portion should be about 140,000. And they would also be doing all the contract administration on top of that. So we were showing that they would have the lion's share, and we would have 100,000, they would have 140, but we were showing that our 100,000 would include the design and permitting. And the reason why we were looking at it like
Why?
that, whenever we put together our first swag at this, is because it might be a hard sell for the Gettysburg Municipal Authority to do design and permitting for all of this wall if it's outside of the scope of their project.
But they're the cause of it, so, and I think
And
there's
it's
other
perfectly fine.
precedents.
We can ask that question, I'm just.
Oh, I
want you-
think we ought to establish a position, it's all theirs, and hear what they respond. Be my thing on it, because they have other, the Interceptor project, yeah, where they pay for other things other than what was exactly theirs. Why? Because they created the issue that caused the project to exist.
this is not a DEP issue, because they're crossing that stream numerous times. This is this is just about designing the wall, and I'm stuck on permitting, because, I mean, what the heck, permitting? I mean, they're always permitting in that area, so,
Yeah, if you want me to, I can ask them to design and permit the whole thing. I'm not sure
Yeah.
how
yeah.
that will be received, but.
Well, ask them, ask them, and then if we need to negotiate with them, we'll start negotiating, but,
That's where we're starting.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, I mean, we're not trying to be a pain, we're trying to protect
Sure.
what funds we have to be used for the residents.
For the highest value, and this isn't
Yeah,
the highest value for us right now.
Exactly.
And for?
But I understand the importance. I do. I think we all do. Okay. Any other questions on that one? I think we've all received a project update list. Thank you very much, Chad and Deb, for putting this together. If anyone has any questions or comments, I don't think we're going to go over the whole thing now. We don't have the time. But it's a pretty comprehensive list, so I thank you, and I hope, I'll make some edits and suggestions, and I hope by New Year, we can get this on the website, because I think it's pretty simple and straightforward, and we can always update it as we go.
Did the press get a copy?
Excuse me?
Did the press get a copy?
Oh, I have no idea. He's welcome to have stuff. Okay. And then the last thing, if there are no questions on this, again, thank you for your hard work on putting this project list together. The 2023 budget, Charles.
All right, the headline is, we mentioned earlier under the finance report that last year we had budgeted $500,000 in anticipation of NIFIF. The 2023 budget does not envision a large grant receipt this year. So essentially, the 2023 budget for the authority will be about half of what it was last year. Last year's budget, meaning 2022's budget, was just over 1 million. This one is 515,000. So that's the 30,000-foot view. We added some revenue line items to kind of more specifically track revenue and expenditures in different line items to get a better handle on some of the revenue and expenditures. So you'll see that in the revenue side, we have a department called 331, which is fines and forfeits. This is where any liens would be reimbursed, solicitor fees reimbursed, court fees reimbursed, postage reimbursed, and any other bank fees associated with filing those liens would be reimbursed to the tune of just over $11,000, assuming that people will settle their liens in the next fiscal year. Minor revenue stream for CDs, charges for services. This is from our engineer stormwater plan review. A couple $100 there. And then obviously Department 383, this is where we have our big revenue stream, which is the stormwater fees that are assessed. And we collect those at a discount, 2% discount, at par, and then at a 10% penalty. To date, in 2022, we are almost 100% collected in this category. We are about 11,000 shy year to date for 2022. So we budgeted in the same ballpark for 2023. And again, we have 515,000 in all revenue categories. Are there any questions on our revenue streams? Okay. On the expense side, we know that we share, the authority purchases its labor and its use of infrastructure. What I mean by infrastructure is software, telephones, computers, those types of things through the borough. So it's a chargeback. We're contracted with the borough to provide those services for the authority. The authority actually has no employees. There are 3 people that work on behalf of the authority's business: myself, the finance accountant, Tammy Mordorf, and the Director of Environmental Historic Preservation, Deborah English. We meticulously, the three of us meticulously kept track of our hours in the last year. In 2022, we had 8% for my salary, 40% for Tammy Murdorf's salary, and 65% for Deborah English's salary. Our time spent on the borough proved that that was actually a little high. So in this 2023 budget, 4% would go towards my salary, 20% towards Tammy Murdorf's salary, and 60% to Deborah English's salary. So that's come down, which is a revenue or an expense decrease for the authority.
Yes,
And that-
thank you. We did a deep dive on this, and so
Yeah.
thank you for your meticulous records, really.
So that's the good news.
Yeah.
There's a
The bad-
little
go ahead.
bit offsetting bad news.
Yeah,
in
there
that,
always is.
When you look at the proportion of the authority's benefits for our salaries, and the borough's been talking about this quite extensively over the last couple of weeks with their look at the 2023 budget, our health insurance premiums took a really bad hit in 2023. They're going up 16%. So a little bit of what was saved in a decrease in the responsibility for the salaries is going to be slightly offset for increases in some of our benefits. Overall, when you look at all the expense categories, and we can go through these line by line if you'd like, but I would just highlight that if you don't account for the $500,000 that we had planned for in the NIFWIF funds, adjusted for that, if you look at the 2022 budget, we had $822,000 expected in expenses there. If you took out the $500,000, we would have budgeted $322,000 in expenses. For 2023, that goes up just under $8,700. So what I'm saying there is you're actually now, what we've saved in offsets for salaries and some other items allows the authority to put an additional $8,700 into capital projects.
Right, thank you.
Right.
That's the bottom line. Okay, good.
Other than that, just for timeline, the Borough Council, after our meeting today, will be authorizing the advertisement of their 2023 budget.
Right.
We have different protocols here for the authority, but just so everyone understands that the borough's budget is predicated on some of the reimbursable expenses in this budget. So if there's tinkering to be had, this would definitely be the time to do it.
Well, let me say, I did tinker. Spent a while with Deborah and Charles and went over everything especially on the salary side. We didn't know about fringe benefits at the time. So I think what's being proposed in this budget is very reasonable, and I think the detailed time sheets back it up. So it's, I hate to say it, but it is what it is, and it's more accurate now than it has been in prior years, so. And the money saved is just reallocated to our projects, which is what we should be doing. So I, for one, feel good about it. I think we have the best budget since I've been here.
So then, in theory, we could have this adopted the same night council plans to adopt their budget on December 12th.
Right. Do you need something from us, a consensus vote, to say we've reviewed the budget and that I'll say, we approve it as presented?
My intention is to advertise this budget with the borough's budget.
Okay.
So, what will be posted, so this is Fund 9 in
Right.
a long list of other funds that the borough deals with. So this budget will be posted for public review at the same time, even though that might be a different requirement than is.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, would it be helpful to have a consensus vote from this group, this authority, to say, we've reviewed Fund 9, and we approve it as presented?
It's helpful to the borough. I mean, you could take a preliminary vote on it, or you can just
Yeah.
kinda say that nobody's opposed, assuming that's the case.
Right.
I'm not opposed, frankly, I haven't looked at it in detail, but
I wouldn't approve it
infinite
tonight.
trust in
Yeah.
the chair.
No, I mean, because at the end of the day, let's face it, if the borough, if their budget changes, this one's not gonna be changed. You know, this is embedded in a bigger
Yeah,
budget, so what
I
I'm
would-
saying.
I will look at it slightly different. If
Okay.
the authority does not agree to reimburse at
Then
the
the
levels that
borough
are
has to
proposed in
share.
this, then
Right.
their budget becomes unbalanced.
I got it. So, I think if I'm on the borough, I would want to hear that we approve this. So I would,
It's more that I think, you know, in any scenario that we don't want to be making any last minute adjustments. All changes would have to occur before December 12th.
right,
So, I mean, I think that having looked over everything, I don't anticipate from my end requesting any changes.
okay?
I also don't anticipate any changes, particularly since you took the time to sit down and look at the ratios.
Right. Yeah, I like it. So,
Is that a consensus?
so let me put it out. I will make a motion that, at this point, the budget as presented, or Fund 9, that, we approve it as presented tonight. Period. If there are any changes, I'm not putting this in the motion, but period, okay? We don't anticipate any changes, that's why I'm saying that we would approve it as presented, period.
So is that different than adopting a budget?
I don't
Well,
know.
I-
Between
I
that
say
and-
We adopt the budget.
My point of order question would be if you can adopt a budget without it being advertised yet for this authority.
You can as an authority. You're.
Yeah,
fundamentally-
their requirements are different than the
Right.
boroughs.
I mean, it seems prudent, I think, to just adopt it all on December 12th, but
Yeah,
just so
that-
it has the advertising
Right,
exposure.
so actually, what's gonna be published for public review on the 28th is not required under the authority.
That's what I mean, but if you're
Yeah.
going to publish it, and most people are used to seeing all of it published, it just seems that December 12th is the right day to adopt everything.
Right.
Okay, so we're receiving the information, we'll let it ride with the borough budget. No one is expressing, let the minutes show, no one's expressing any,
Yeah.
any problem with it, and we'll just let it
I think the borough
ride.
can rely on that.
Yeah.
You know.
No, this is a consensus, not a motion.
The consensus is, I think, that there's no objection to it.
There's no objection
And
to it.
that-
We didn't take
yeah.
any vote, but there's no objection to it based on what we've seen as,
And the
as Fund
board,
9.
the authority intends to review and approve a budget. if
But
necessary.
I'd say the administrative part of it, you've worked, that sounds really good, but how we're gonna fund individual projects next year, yeah, I'd like to look at it.
Okay, okay. That's fine. All right, any other questions or comments on the budget?
No.
Okay. Public comment, it's time for public comment. You.
Just
oh,
before
what-
that, we need to make our list of meetings for 2023.
Oh,
Take
good
action
point.
on that. Not tonight, but.
But in December,
We'll add that
could you,
for the December
could you,
agenda.
I just wanted
you
to
put that
mention
on the
that.
agenda? Thank you. It's that time. Okay.
As well as, we have 5-year staggered terms when people rotate on and off.
Ah, that's right.
Oh, we have a winner.
He's next up.
John's next
And he
up.
knows it.
Yeah.
You have to go off?
No.
No,
Be
okay, it's
reappointed.
not terminated.
Okay. Yeah. I think next meeting, we need to talk about, membership. Okay. I want to make sure Deb hears that.
She didn't hear it.
Did she? I don't think she did.
What about radio?
Deb, the other thing on the agenda, Deb, is our terms of members needs to be discussed at the next meeting in preparation for the January meeting. Okay, public comment. No public comment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's now adjourned. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It was a long meeting.
7 o'clock.
Wow.
All right, good evening and welcome to the November meeting of the Gettysburg Borough Council. We'll open with a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I have no other opening remarks this evening or announcements. We have our motions there for the agenda as presented, and then our various meeting minutes. So, have a motion for to approve the November 14th, 2022 agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments about the agenda? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we then have a series of minutes for the council meeting of October 11th, the public hearing for the CDBG funds on October 24th, the public hearing for the intended authorization of the Act 172 tax credit program for the firefighters on October 24th. Before we accept the motion, are there any known changes for any of those minutes? Okay, if not, can we have a motion to approve those minutes as presented?
So moved.
Okay, a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments about those minutes? Council meeting October 11th, CDBG October 24th, or the Act 172 of October 24th? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. And finally, the budget work sessions. These minutes are for the budget work sessions on October 17th, October 24th, and November 7th of 2022. Are there any known corrections to those minutes? If not, can I have a motion, please, to approve those as presented?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Questions or comments about the budget work session minutes? Not all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. That takes us to our special presentation. Mayor Freeling.
Dave Reese, come on down. Borough of Gettysburg, Office of the Mayor Proclamation. Whereas William David Reese, Dave, is retiring after 41 years of service with the Borough of Gettysburg. He was hired on December 21st, 1981 with the Highway Department of Parking Meter Maintenance. Whereas after the Racehorse Alley parking garage opened, the borough added a parking department in 1990. Dave was then under the direction of the parking manager and assumed the responsibility of maintaining the parking garage, which included cleaning the restrooms and winter maintenance of the garage. He also did lawn services at the parking garage, borough office, and Lincoln Square. Whereas during his employment, he served with outstanding dedication and with unselfish service to both the citizens of the Borough of Gettysburg and his fellow workers. Whereas his wisdom and longevity are greatly appreciated and will be missed. Now therefore, I, Rita Freeling, Mayor of the Borough of Gettysburg, on behalf of the Borough Council, the Gettysburg Police Department, and the entire borough staff, thank you for your service, and we all wish you a very happy and enjoyable retirement.
Thank you.
Given under my hand and seal of the Borough of Gettysburg this 14th day of November 2022.
Thank you.
Congratulations. But not tomorrow.
Have a staff luncheon for him.
Okay.
He's off the clock.
See ya. Maybe not. All right. And very good. Our best wishes to Dave. That takes us to public comment. Our first session is restricted to items that are on the agenda. We ask you to limit yourself to 5 minutes. State your name and address. Do we have any public comment for our first session? Seeing none, we move on to our current and old business. Our first report this evening is from the planning department. Manager Gable, do you want to report or highlight some items from Ms. Marshall? Or is there anything you
I don't have
aware
anything
of?
to add other than what she's
Okay.
provided.
Does anybody have any questions from Ms. Marshall's report? If you do, I can do my best to respond to those items. Okay, if not, our next department is Environmental and Historic Preservation. Ms. English?
Thank you. You have my report. If you have any questions, I don't know if you want stormwater updates for council or.
We probably should make a brief mention,
Okay.
at least, just to put on everyone's radar. Mr. Lawver and I were just in the Stormwater Authority's meeting. There was discussion of a rather large grant application potential that would come through the county's allocation of the ARPA funds, and it would require a 50% match. And this concerns the potential restoration and replacement of large segments, if not the entire wall of the Tiber. To give you a sense of what we're talking about, the entire project was running estimates anywhere from $3.7 to $4.2 million. So the discussion that started to occur was essentially whether or not to go ahead and move on that. And there was definitely some very valid discussion about the borough's role, and there were suggestions that we even consider using some of our own ARPA funds to match some of this. And there, I think, are things that have to be investigated about the legality and appropriateness of that. But it would be a large sum of money to be biting off at one time, but it would also deal with a very large infrastructure problem that we're well aware of. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there was some discussion about ownership of the walls and who owns them. I think Mr. Lawver and I both are of the opinion, and not everyone I think is, that whether the borough owns them or not, if they collapse, they're going to be the borough's problem. So, something to be aware of that we could be discussing here very shortly, and how to deal with that.
Am I wrong, Mr. President Heiser, about, this was before my time moving to Gettysburg, there was a massive flood before with that, and major damage and probably loss of life as well. About 20
Near 96, there were
96.
some very dramatic rescues in the area of what is now called Creekside Apartments.
And that's right. We're same area we're talking about. The Tiber?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the locations where the Tiber goes underneath the building, which is one of the horrifying
That-
parts of kind of everything we've
Right.
discovered. And Chad, I don't want to belabor this, but you know, I think John was mentioning in other meetings, there's a big difference between when we have Tiber walls in areas that do not. We've had issues where they support our alleys where we move quickly, but also when you have a wall that goes under someone's building and it's basically also their foundation. You know, it's a much more difficult situation. Yeah, that whole, it's funny, we're talking about something that's so expensive of a project. You know, if that property is not a single parcel, was actually subdivided into condominiums years later. If it hadn't been, at some point prior to now, I think I would have been talking about eminent domain and how to make that into a stormwater retention area, but now I think it would be so impractical because of all the different parcel owners. It's kind of unthinkable that property, you know, it obviously wouldn't be built today, right? But where it is, it's a place that at times we've posted voluntary evacuation orders, and you might want to pack your things because the water is an inch below the bridge there at Racehorse Alley. So. Jeff, yeah.
So I believe the timing of this is important too, because luckily the Stormwater Authority we're aware that the walls have issues, right? So the Stormwater Authority at the beginning of this year started doing the analysis. We have the cost estimates in place. We know what needs to be done pretty much. And we started talking about the ownership. So the process has happened. We didn't conclude that analysis, and now we've been afforded this opportunity with this ARPA money, and it's kind of going to be one of those one-time offer, maybe once in a lifetime offers, to have a large portion of this funded. The question is, do you go after it now or not? And we only have till December 21st to make that decision. That's going to be part of the challenge.
So the Stormwater Authority, a month from this evening, will be looking to decide whether or not to essentially commit to funding 50% of that project, as that's required to make the application, which is an incredible amount of money to chew off. But I mean, in our discussions there, we also looked at the fact that this is a piece of infrastructure that is basically waiting to fail. It's going to happen, and it'll probably happen when we don't have someone funding the other half. So there was some conjecture there about whether these are state grant funds or federal. The more I think about it in my mind, they have to be federal.
Yes, they are
Which
federal.
means that we can't use.
Correct.
So it had been suggested about Penvest and various other ways to raise the funds and spread it out over time, in terms of the match, the cost share, which is a match in this case. So yeah, it will be coming quickly. So I guess, Deborah, we can get back to
And I do
that
want to
portion,
mention
yeah.
to please pay your stormwater bills. We do have a few outstanding payments, and liens will be processed next year, January 1st. So please get your payments in for the 2022 fee cycle. And then I have my motion on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and it seemed like a larger quantity than usual,
188 folks.
which usual is hard to gauge because it's so short of an authority's lifespan at this point. All right, can I have someone bite off the hard motion?
I'll make a
Ms. Lawson,
motion
thank you.
to review the recommendation of the Borough of Gettysburg Historic Architectural Review Board, HARB, following its review on October 19th, 2022, and granted certificates of appropriateness for the following applications as presented. COA 22-0101, Major Project, 404 Baltimore Street, Mark C. McLean, to approve the selective window restoration and replacement project using Marvin Elevate Ultrex wood windows with the same window system and grid style as submitted, that is consistent with the Gettysburg Design Guide as presented to the board in the application dated August 30th, 2022. COA 220107, Major Project, 646 York Street, Sturgill Realty, to convert the existing structure from 3 separate tenant units into 1 large unit as submitted, and is consistent with the Secretary of the Interior Guidelines and the Gettysburg Design Guide as presented to the board in the application dated September 27th, 2022. COA 220105, Critical Project, 145 Carlisle Street, KPI Technology, to replace the existing wood siding with hardy plank 6-inch German lap siding, repair and repoint the foundation wall, and build a new bulkhead, and is consistent with the Secretary of the Interior Guidelines and the Gettysburg Design Guide as presented to the board in the application dated October 4th, 2022. COA 220109, Critical Project, 238 Baltimore Street, Ronald Langdon, to return building to an IBC R3 residential use as a bed and breakfast with 5 or less rooms for rent, and with owner occupancy as their primary residence on the 3rd floor, and is consistent with the Secretary of Interior Guidelines and the Gettysburg Design Guide as presented to the board in the application dated September 28th, 2022.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments about the HARB motion this evening? All right, if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Anyone have any questions for Ms. English this evening? If not, we'll move on to the parking department. Ms. Fissel.
Good evening. You all have my report. The numbers are looking good. They look pretty much the same as last October. Maybe a little elevated, so everything looks good there. I don't really have anything else other than the motions.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Bissell not related to the motions? All right, our first one there is our MOU with the county regarding jury duty. So I'll make that motion, please.
I'll make a motion to authorize the entry into a memorandum of understanding with the County of Adams relative to parking services for citizens of Adams County called to jury duty with a termination date of December 31st, 2025, in order to update and extend the current memorandum of understanding, which will expire on December 31, 2022. Wesley K. Heiser, President of Borough Council, and Sarah L. Stahl, Borough Secretary, are hereby authorized to execute the memorandum of understanding on behalf of the borough.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, the next one is for the Christmas festival.
I'll make a motion to set a temporary daily rate of $15 for parking in the borough's Racehorse Alley parking garage on Saturday, December 3rd, 2022, during a Gettysburg Christmas Festival special event.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Questions and comments about the special parking rate?
I just have a question, please.
Yes.
Why are we only doing that Saturday and not Friday as well?
I would presume because Saturday's the big draw day.
Saturday is the big draw day. Honestly, this is the first time the council's actually authorized this provision in your fee resolution, so this is kind of an experiment. Just for everyone's knowledge, there is ample free parking available at the festival as well, out at Hack, Gara, and at the school district, provided with shuttle service into town. So if people want the premium parking in the center of the festival, you should expect to pay for that. To answer your question as to why not Friday and Saturday, those are half-day events, and it's difficult for us to program midday on our app and at the kiosk. So we'll see how this works.
I was happy to see it because a lot of other towns and cities have something like this. They'll have event parking
Event
for special
rates.
events, so.
Yeah. So just a reminder for everyone, the daily rate in the garage is $12 currently for 24 hours. This would be $15 for a 24-hour period.
Any other questions and comments about the parking rate? The borough's only source of revenue from that event.
Correct.
So. All right. If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then our arrangement with the retail merchants. So let's make that motion, please.
I'll make a motion consistent with the memorandum of understanding with the Gettysburg Area Retail Merchants Association Incorporated, GARMA, to approve free holiday parking for the 2022 holiday season from Thanksgiving Day through New Year's Day. Free parking is designated every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the holiday season, except for Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, where parking will be paid as usual during the metered hours. The designated parking areas, as requested by GARMA, are as follows: Lincoln Square and the first blocks of Baltimore Street, York Street, Carlisle Street, and Chambersburg Street, and the first block of Steinway Avenue.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I'd like to thank Ms. Dillon from GARMA and Ms. Fissel from the parking department here and working with some of the sign language. And one of the very difficult things is how to print these in such a way they can be reused. And GARMA's role in ensuring that they get up and down at the right times will help kind of save some of that expense for GARMA down the line. Questions and comments about the MOU?
I'll just make a comment personally on this. I think it's a great idea, and I'm going to vote for it, but I want the public to know that we're not actually getting any income from this. So it's compliments from Gettysburg Area Retail Merchants Association and the Borough of Gettysburg. We're both saying free parking. we're not actually getting money for it and then giving free parking.
Right, yeah, please come
It's not being
downtown,
sponsored by anybody.
come downtown to a traditionally less traffic time of year and purchase your Christmas gifts. Okay, holiday gifts of whatever type. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, if not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, any outstanding questions for Ms. Fissel? All right, if not, we go to Public Works, Mr. Harbaugh.
Evening. You all should have had my report. Couple highlights on it. We're getting busy with these upcoming special events for the holidays. We'll be busy with those all the way up to the first of the year. Last week we conducted our fall brush pickup. Today we actually started collecting the leaves. We'll be collecting leaves, going around town, keep making rounds around town, collecting piles of leaves that are out there along the curbs and alleys, all the way up till January 1st, weather pending.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mr. Harbaugh?
I'd just like to make a comment to the public that I believe the ordinance states that you should be sweeping up your leaves from the sidewalk just like you do the snow, not sweeping them into the street. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a big problem, especially when we have weather events like we did last week and people getting them too far to the street. So please, just on the curb line or in the alley, do the alley also, I believe.
Along the edge of the alley, yes.
Yeah, just have to keep in mind it has to be accessible by a vacuum truck. Okay.
Correct.
All right, any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Clayball.
Good evening. You have a copy of my written report in your packets. One thing I wanted to highlight is the Gettysburg Interloop Phase B project. Design of that project is underway. It's moving along smoothly. So I would anticipate that probably at our January workshop meetings, we're going to start presenting some things to you guys and having some discussions on that one-way alley conversation that we need to have at some point soon. We have engaged a traffic consultant who's going to be doing some studies of the traffic signals, and we want to make sure that we understand if we make it one way, what kind of impacts are going to be to those traffic signals before we come to you guys and have that discussion. So that'll be coming around soon. We are also aggressively putting together a funding strategy for that project. The next fund that we're going to be applying for is for county ARFA funds. That is due Monday next week. So,
What's it, ARFF?
it's Adams County. Do you know it, Charles, off the top of your
There's
head?
so many different.
ARRF.
Yeah.
ARRF.
Yeah.
Uh, Adams
ARRF.
Response and
ARF,
Recovery
not
Fund.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. It gets difficult to keep track of them all.
Yep. There's I think we have about a dozen different funds that we're looking at to complete our funding strategy to complete the project, but there's no major obligation to the borough that changes with that. They do require a 15% match. I'm sorry, that one doesn't require any match. That one doesn't require any match, so it doesn't really change the borough's funding strategy at all. I also wanted to point out, I included at the end of my engineer's report some stormwater authority projects. And two things, because this is the borough's permit, the MS4 permit is technically the borough's permit, the Stormwater Authority helps us through it, but we are still in good standings with DEP. We submitted our annual report, they approved that, so I wanted to make note to that. And also I wanted to note that we have substantially completed the Culps Run Stream Restoration Project. That was the most notable project that we had in this 5-year period. One of the big reasons why we created the authority. We did just complete that project. That fulfills our obligation for our pollution reduction credits, that one project alone. So I say substantially complete because we're going to have to maintain it over the next couple of years, make sure invasive species plants don't start working their way in, make sure it doesn't have erosion and stuff like that. But we do hope to have, the county did a flyover with a drone. We hope to have that uploaded to the website within the next couple of months here, along with some pictures and a kind of a project showcase. So, but again, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that because it is a substantial project from the Stormwater Authority. I have nothing to add unless you have any questions.
Questions or comments? Yes.
The Shippensburg Physical Therapy, blacktop sidewalk,
I noticed that also.
Mhm.
That's permissible? They put a concrete sidewalk on the south side near their building, but then poured an asphalt sidewalk along Water Street.
Yep, that's what they proposed in their land development plan, and that was what was approved by the planning commission. It's the same concept as the Gettysburg Middle School. The trail at 8 feet wide, it was required to be part of the Gettysburg Interloop spur to get to the North Gettysburg Trail. So that's part of the trail, that 8-foot wide piece there. It's 8 feet wide. And the negotiation was to make it asphalt instead of concrete, just like the just like the Gettysburg School District did. So if you look at the Gettysburg School District, same thing. It's concrete on one side and asphalt on the other side, where there's the trail.
So that'll continue then down Water Street at some point?
The connection, the spur, the Gettysburg Interloop's connection does come. It goes through the Ready site.
Yeah.
And past Shippensburg PT, and it goes out to where the North Gettysburg Trail is, out to the high school. So I don't know that there's any specific plan for how that's going to get connected yet.
Yeah, I mean,
That's just been the route that's been designated.
The sense of scale is dramatically different. You know, in the middle school property is a large scale property. This is relatively short. And I know that, remind me when Ron from Spectre Coat, before his passing, he had arranged, I know, some right of way things for that trail, but yeah, that portion looks out of place.
It looks odd.
Very much so.
I won't disagree with you.
Okay. So the planning commission approved that and they built it as approved.
That's accurate.
Okay, good to know. All right, other questions or comments for Mr. Clayball? Okay, if not, Chief Glennie? Police Department?
In the police department report, I'd be happy to answer any questions on that. And Mr. Lauber generally asks at the end of my report whether there's any crashes at Middle and Howard, and we just had one today. But no speed or any of the normal complaints were involved. It was just one car mistakenly pulled out in front of another, so there's no indication that he has speed or anything like that. But we did have a crash at Howard and Middle today.
No injuries.
Minor injuries.
Okay. Interesting. Any questions for the chief related to his report? You'll note the agenda item that we have for the motion relates to our hiring practices, and this is an anticipation not only of the two budgeted positions, but just of the need in general to make that shift to non-certified personnel, which we talked about a bit extensively in our budget work session.
I believe it will. Additionally, as you said, even over top of the two positions in the budget, I think that it'll better put us in a position to hit an eligibility list, which we have not had in my tenure here.
Yeah, no, we've gotten into a habit of essentially generating a list when we need to hire, and it really is not supposed to work that way. We're supposed to have a list on hand when the need arrives. So
It really should widen the applicant pool. I mean, we've had, I guess, pretty extensive discussion about that.
Questions for the chief? If not, can we have that motion to revise the civil service rules and regulations?
I'll make a motion to request the Civil Service Commission to proceed with the amendment of its rules and regulations to authorize and facilitate the hiring of police cadets who have not yet completed Act 120 basic training as borough employees for the purposes of enabling such police cadets to obtain enrollment at a certified training school or academy and to complete Act 120 basic training pursuant to the Pennsylvania Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Program.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I would also comment that we have contacted Labor Council regarding this. Chief Lenny's also been helpful in providing a few examples of other municipalities' rules and regulations that have this type of program where they hire non-certified personnel. So while we've already made some effort into getting to this change in place, we do have, time to make this happen, and we'll make sure that we do it properly. Any questions or comments related to the motion?
I just have a comment. I know I've expressed this before, but I'm really hoping that we can look for people who would add some diversity to the force in terms of representing groups that aren't necessarily represented on the police force. So I know we've talked about that before.
This should be a substantial step in that direction
Yeah,
as
I
well.
hope we
or
can.
The ability to do
Yeah.
that.
And it would be wonderful to have, someone who is bilingual, for example, could speak Spanish would be great, so.
Okay.
As well as other groups that are not represented currently.
Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll direct the Civil Service Commission to move forward with those steps. That takes us to the Officer of the Manager and Treasurer, Mr. Gable and Ms. Bell. Would like to
I
get.
don't have anything else to add.
Okay.
On my written report, I would like to just highlight the mention of the waste management contract. As council and the public know, the borough has been pursuing waste management to achieve a better performance as it relates to their contract obligations with the borough. And the borough had fined waste management in some of those correspondence for infractions or not meeting the standards of the borough. Waste management has in fact remitted the $7,500 to the borough and substantially improved their service to the borough over the last 90 days, as was requested of them in a letter back this past summer. So I just want to update the council and the community on that. A letter has been sent to Waste Management acknowledging their increased service provisions to the borough, and that the borough seems to be in a much better place than they were 90 days ago. And so at this point, we should consider this closed. We'll obviously continue to monitor Waste Management, but the service has definitely improved. The complaints have definitely come way down. If not, I haven't heard of any personally in the last couple of weeks. And senior management with Waste Management is in touch with us actually on a daily basis to make sure that we are meeting the standards of, that they are meeting the standards of the contract. As it relates to the borough finances, I just wanted to highlight as of the end of last month, there was just under 2.1 million in liquid cash in the checking account. And I just wanted to highlight that at the next workshop, I would be entertaining a discussion with the council on the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust called PLIGIT. The council is familiar that over the last 12 months we've been meticulously squirreling away the reserve fund into CDs. The beauty of PLIGIT is that if we would move those reserve funds into the PLIGIT trust, the rate of return on those investments is significantly higher than we are currently getting with our AC&B bank CDs. Right now, our rate of return on those CDs is 0.05%. PLIGIT is the better part of 5%.
Wow.
So
That's a big difference.
what I hope the conversation is actually going to be is a no-brainer, but something we would need the council to sign off on to make that transfer. Other than I have nothing else to add to my report.
Okay, so we'll start with our motions, and then if we have any questions as we go, certainly please ask. The first is to accept the bills and payrolls for the month as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
A motion and a second. Questions or comments about the bills or payrolls? All right, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the next is for our accountants. Pardon me, our auditors, who are accountants.
They are accountants.
Someone please make that motion, please, for Mayor Dussel.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution appointing Maher
Mayor Dussel.
Dussel, a firm of certified public accountants registered in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as the independent auditor of the Borough of Gettysburg during fiscal year 2023 in order to make an independent examination of the accounting records of the borough for fiscal year 2022 and to perform such other duties and to exercise the powers as conferred upon an independent auditor under the Borough Code.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have our auditors for 2022. The next motion concerns the publishing of the proposed budget with estimates of revenues and expenditures.
I'll make a motion to authorize the Borough Secretary, Sarah L. Stull, to give notice and cause the same to be published that the proposed budget providing an annual estimate of revenues and an annual estimate of expenditures for fiscal year 2023 has been prepared and will be made available for public inspection for a period of not less than 10 days, commencing on Monday, November 28th, 2022, and ending at the close of business on Monday, December 12th, 2022, prior to the completion and adoption of the budget for fiscal year 2023 by the Borough Council.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and second. Any questions or comments about the motion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, our next is for the proposed resolution, as I know Mr. Eastman want to point out, that when you do not increase taxes, as did probably about 2 or 3 years ago, they changed the borough code.
That is correct, yeah.
But now you can adopt it by resolution as opposed to ordinance.
As opposed to going through the formal ordinance process, which requires advertising and all of that, so this is a good thing.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to authorize the preparation and finalization of a proposed resolution for consideration and intended adoption at the next monthly general business meeting of the Borough Council to be held on Monday, December 12th, 2022, for the purposes of setting, updating, and confirming the borough's fees and charges for the issuance of licenses, permits, and the provision of municipal services in fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Today I received an email from a constituent who is a town guide and was alarmed to see the license for that particular activity almost double, going up from 125 to 300. And he asked if I could please fill him in on the thinking behind that huge jump. Carly related it to code enforcement activities and staff time. But I just wanted you all to know that that was quite a jump and quite a blow to those fellows who will be, and women who will be paying that.
Yeah, and that was something we discussed here at our last budget work session, where it is a dramatic increase, and we see, though, a lot of effort being expended in attempting to ensure that those programs are conforming to the ordinances that apply. That was the justification for that.
Do we know when the last time it was raised?
I do not.
I don't think it's ever been raised.
Sounds like a good time to do it.
I would say that this ordinance has been in place for, Johnny would say about 15 years, 20?
Yeah.
Probably about the time that it applies to more than ghost tours, but I think it's probably around the time that ghost tours really took off, which it's going to be more than 20 years,
Yeah.
because I can remember some folks just older than I that were in the high school theater made a good summer revenue working those programs as it got bigger right around the late 90s, early 2000s. So I don't think it's certainly been updated since then. Any other questions or comments on the fees? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the next motion is for the tax resolution.
I'll make a motion to authorize the solicitor to prepare and finalize a proposed tax resolution for consideration and intended adoption at the monthly general business meeting of the Borough Council to be held on Monday, December 12th, 2022, for the purposes of fixing the real property tax rate for the Borough of Gettysburg for fiscal year 2023 at 4.1770 mils, the occupation tax rate at 30 mils, and the fire protection services appropriations tax rate at 0.2500 mils.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments about the tax rates? Okay, which will remain status quo. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the next motion concerns the Act 172 tax credits for the volunteer firefighters.
I'll make a motion to authorize the finalization and the publication for intended enactment of a proposed ordinance of the Borough Council of the Borough of Gettysburg at its December 12th, 2022 monthly general business meeting pursuant to Pennsylvania Act 172 of 2016, as amended, authorizing certain tax credits against tax liability imposed by the annual tax on real estate and the annual tax on earned income as levied by the Borough of Gettysburg as incentives for the use and benefit of certain individuals who are qualified and certified as active volunteers for the provision of fire protection services in the borough as provided by and through the Gettysburg Fire Department.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions or comments about this? This is for the finalization and publication.
Yes, I want to say thank you to President Heiser for bringing this to our attention, that this was an option that we could employ to encourage people both to serve in our volunteer fire service as well as to stay in the borough so that we can have better response times and that your teams are adequately staffed when responding. I'm glad that we're able to do this, so thank you.
Ms. Stoll, you can note that I'll be an abstention on this as I expect to be impacted by that. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that moves us then to our emergency operations plan.
I'll make a motion to authorize the preparation and finalization of a proposed resolution for consideration and intended adoption at the December 12th, 2022 monthly general business meeting of the Borough Council for the purpose of establishing the annual criteria for a volunteer providing fire protection services in the Borough of Gettysburg to be certified as an active volunteer in order to claim certain tax credits against tax liability imposed by the annual tax on real estate and the annual tax on earned income as levied by the Borough of Gettysburg pursuant to the ordinance intended to be enacted by the Borough Council pursuant to Pennsylvania Act 172 of 2016 as amended.
I apologize, I got a motion ahead. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so this is the second part of that component of the resolution. Any questions or comments?
The only thing that I would say is I mean, council's been doing the heavy lifting here. I mean, you conducted, in terms of procedures, a public hearing. We've published our notice of intent that you're going to proceed. You'll be enacting the ordinance, but the resolution will then essentially you will adopt, setting forth the parameters for the qualification of someone as an active volunteer to qualify for those tax credits. So it's kind of the nuts and bolts of how the program's going to operate.
Questions or comments? All right, Ms. Stoll, again, I'll be abstaining. Yes.
I'll be abstaining too.
Mr. Lawler will be abstaining. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then that takes us to our motion for the emergency operations plan.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the proposed 2022 Emergency Operations Plan, EOP for Gettysburg Borough, Adams County, as the updated and current disaster emergency management plan for the borough, as required pursuant to the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Services Code.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Questions and comments about the EOP? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any questions for Mr. Gable or Ms. Stoll? All right, if not, that takes us to our liaison reports. Ms. Sellers.
Report in your packet. A couple comments. The giving spree was last month, so very proud to announce what you've probably already heard, but over $3.1 million collected in Adams County for over 90 nonprofits. So Main Street wishes to thank its donors, so thank you to our public who sees the value in investing locally. The brick program, last Monday we installed 184 bricks, a record for Main Street Gettysburg. Those were installed on the southeast quad near the Wills House. So again, thanks to the people that support that program and continue to grow that program. we're up to about 8,000 bricks downtown. So over the last almost 32 years. So very grateful for the Gettysburg Nature Alliance. That is a $25,000 grant to the Welcome Center project. So very excited to continue to see local support and grow for that project, recognizing the need that is going to fill in the center of our downtown. So that continues to pick up momentum and interest from the public, and we're quite thankful for that. And today being November 14th, we have 18 days till the Christmas festival. Nobody's counting but me, but there we are. A lot going on, and really all going quite well right now. We're down to the nuts and bolts of things, all the cooperation, partners, volunteers, and sponsors. A huge shout out to Steinmore Avenue Bid, the Gettysburg Heritage Center, the Gettysburg Nature Alliance, Destination Gettysburg, Celebrate Gettysburg, the Bus Tour Company, and the Gettysburg Foundation, the Hoffman Trust, and a host of merchant and other organization sponsors. I encourage you to go to our website for the festival, GettysburgChristmasFestival.com. See all the people that are making this happen, as a partnership to bring a whole weekend of things that are going to be delightful for your friends and family and visitors from near and far. Making a comment on parking. This is something that we have been working on with a myriad of partners, from Wellspan to the school district to Seminary Ridge to the rec park. I will make one comment about the school district. Friday is a school day, so please don't take advantage of that free parking until maybe after 4 o'clock, so we can make sure that we get kids and buses out of school before we clog up their parking lots. We're also working in cooperation with Gettysburg Area Education Foundation. So whereas they are providing free parking, if you wanted to make a donation to that nonprofit in support of their scholarship funds for that gesture on their behalf, that would be wonderful. So shuttles, music, live reindeer, mechanical reindeer, costumed reindeer, every kind of reindeer that you can imagine is going to be in Gettysburg that weekend. Ice sculptures, carriage rides, performers, craft fairs, green sales, cookies, as far as the eye can see. There are sign-ups for volunteers if you know people that want to get involved. There are big things and small things to do. Really, this is one of those opportunities that you can really get involved in something that is quite magical at this time of year, and I think it's going to bring a huge impact to the borough at the fourth quarter. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I just want to thank you for all the work that you do for this.
Oh,
because I know,
thank you.
I know it's not a small task.
Indeed, indeed it is. So, all right, well, I appreciate the support.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The Recreation Authority, Mr. Carr. We just had Ms. Pettigrew.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just had a full report,
Yeah.
I'm sure, from her. So I have nothing.
Okay. Mr. Berger, the Municipal Authority.
Yes, budget discussions are gonna be upcoming here on Monday. We're probably gonna look to keep it consistent. We alternate every year, a modest increase between the sewer and water, usually about 5%. So I anticipate that's what's gonna happen. In a couple weeks, we'll be having a rate study workshop. During the pandemic, we saw some weaknesses. Obviously, in the hotels and elsewhere, we didn't have as many people in there. So between fixed costs and variable costs, we're going to take a look at the rate structure, try to make it pandemic-proof. So that's upcoming. And also in December, we're going to have an aquifer test for the proposed Andrew well. The well is going to create another source for our system. The test, we take data, groundwater levels, water table, wetlands, and effects of residential wells that are close by. So we're going to be checking that out here in December.
Okay, very good. The bid, Ms. Butterfield.
Yes, the solicitor for the bid, Todd King, was at the meeting and gave a briefing on a financial arrangement that is shaping up between the borough and Steinmore, and directing the county to make some adjustments on their billing processes. This will come before this body in the form of a, I guess it'll be a vote, will it be a motion, in the near future? And there'll be more about that then. Harry, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and I would like to commend Tammy for all the work that she has been doing on this particular issue. It's a very, I mean, it's kind of a difficult matter in the sense that the borough has been paid over several years delinquent assessments that should have been going to the neighborhood improvement district. But in all fairness to the borough, I mean, they're coming from the county, and the county should have been directing those to the bid. But we had a meeting with county officials to see what might be done so that this could be handled differently. The borough has been working very reasonably with the bid. Funds have been used already to pay off the PIB loan, and I think there's probably going to be an additional payment slightly over $2,000 to make up the difference. But essentially, they've had to reconstruct, these payments that have been wrongfully provided over the years, and really at no fault of the boroughs. But there will be a vote, and I anticipate that there will be a settlement agreement or an agreement that will kind of lay that out. Ultimately, we're talking about somewhere around $12,000 total.
Charles, were you satisfied with that meeting and the way things were shaping up?
Yeah, essentially the boroughs used the money that was paid to us prematurely, if you will. So we'll retain the difference, or we'll retain what the bid had owed us, the borough, for the PIB loan to do the Steinway project, and then there's a difference of a little over $2,000 that the borough will pay back to the bid, and everyone's even.
I mean, how this happened is that essentially, this only happens with essentially delinquent taxpayers. Delinquent taxpayers are delinquent with their payments to the borough and taxes, but they also have been delinquent with their payments to the bid, for the bid assessments. The bid invoices separately. The borough, of course, sends its tax bills out separately. However, those payments come into the Adams County Tax Claim Bureau together, and that had not been separated out when those payments were being remitted. So.
Well, I too thank Tammy for all the time she's put into this, both in researching emails back to who knows when, and cooperating with the Steinway folks and with the county folks, and we are thankful for that. And also, I think it's important, as Harry alluded to, this was not anyone's purposefully doing. It was all just circumstance, and it just happened to come to light, and now it's being corrected, and so we're pleased. The other thing I wanted to add to Jill's report about the festival is that on the 29th, the Avenue of Trees will be set up on Steinway, if the weatherman cooperates, and Carly is in charge of the volunteers who'll be decorating those trees. Room for all if anyone would like to join us.
Okay, very good. The County Boroughs Association, Mayor Freeland?
Nothing, because we had a meeting when I reported the last time about the last and final meeting of the year is November 21st, next Monday.
Right, it's next month. Okay. The Council of Governments, Ms. Butterfield.
Yes, this was an interesting meeting. The program was presented by the IT department of the county, and he announced big changes coming in their identification of their software systems. They will no longer be adamscounty.us. They will be adamscounty.gov. And so for a short while, you may be getting emails from someone from the county, and you'll wonder why their email is different. This is why there'll be a transition period for that. The other interesting thing was he talked about, this phrase makes me chuckle, the end of life of the electric devices used by the county. And he talked about what they do with them. They have to put them out for bids and so on. And some interested party from the audience asked, do you recycle them? And he replied that they did. Certain parts of the computer system goes one place and other parts go another. But he then said to the group assembled, you all ought to observe how Gettysburg does their electronic device turn-ins. He said very efficient and should be a model for all. So Sarah, Tammy, Karen, Robbie, take a bow. You are recognized at COG for your fine work. And that's all I have.
I like how you just told everyone else to take a bow and you coordinate like the entire electronics recycling program. Very modest.
Oh, I do have one more thing. I'm sorry. I was asked to announce and to describe the 9/11, I better keep one and read it, Trail, Memorial Trail, 9/11 National Memorial Trail. It's coming through Gettysburg. It's a 1,300-mile multi-purpose trail connecting the 3 national 9/11 memorials. And there's a brochure coming around, and inside you'll see the map of the entire route. And for Gettysburg, it comes in Mummersburg Road, through the college area, onto Lincoln, onto Carlisle, around the circle, back out Carlisle, and then further into the county. So it's an exciting thing to be a part of, and the organizers felt that Historic Gettysburg should be included. Enjoy the brochures.
Okay. Anything for ACTO? Ms. Butterfield, anything for ACTO?
ACTO, I'm on again, okay. Yes. They had public meetings for their tip changes, their transportation improvement program, and in attendance and speaking was a young woman, Stacy Newcomer, from Commuter Services of Pennsylvania. They are meeting with local businesses and municipalities. She'd like to make a tour of municipalities, encouraging businesses to encourage their employees to carpool, because it's good for the environment and good for the time spent. I have this written material here from Commuter Services, if you all would like to take a look at it. An interesting discussion. What is the best way to get the word out of a program to the residents? And for example, is the newspaper the best way, websites, what have you? But it turns out we are one of the few municipalities with a newspaper, so that didn't make the top 3 methods. I direct you to the Saturday, November 12th edition of the Gettysburg Times, and the article by John Spangler in that on page 4 talks in detail about the Bridges program through ACTO. And that's it.
Okay, Abby.
Nothing to report this month, thank you.
Okay. Overdose awareness, Mr. Moon.
Hey, we had our medicine take back on the 29th of last month. Chief, do you happen to know the sheer tonnage we might have brought in?
It was more than usual, I believe. I do not know it off the top of my head. I think it was actually out in the paper, but it was more than usual. I want to say we had 9 or 10 boxes as opposed to the 7 or 8 that we generally get. So I mean, it's not a crushingly larger number, but more.
I think we had 8 boxes at the site, and there was 1 box already here at the station. I think it was something like 90 pounds, so that's really great. I don't know what the take was for the entire county, but Again, this is a great partnership between local law enforcement, community organizations, the DEA. Let's keep these medications and whether they're prescription or over-the-counter, keep them out of our landfills, out of our water tables, dispose of them safely, keep them out of the hands of kids. So please, if you do have medications, squirrel them away, and we'll have another take back in the spring.
I would also add, if I can, Matt.
Please.
There are multiple sites across the county, we're one of them, that have medication drop-off points. You'll generally find them at police stations, so they're more secure, but I know that we have one, Carroll Valley has one, and so if the drop-off day is not convenient, any day that's during business hours, you can drop those medications off in a secure drop box.
Thank you for that. And also, if you happen to use hypodermics and you need a safe way to dispose of your hypodermics, there is a drop box at the Bonneville Fire Department. Our next meeting is tomorrow. So.
Okay. Mr. Berger, trail feasibility.
Nothing on that, but I do want to express my gratitude to Tom Jolin, who invited me to a statewide active transportation summit, which was held on Saturday at Franklin Marshall in Lancaster. Active transportation refers to modes of travel to get to everyday destinations like walking, biking, using a wheelchair, connecting to mass transit. So, you know, see with like the 9/11 trail, even what we've done on Steinway and the Baltimore Street project and the inner loop. These things I think are great for the community, walkability, bikes. It's not just good for the environment and people's health, but also economic development and quality of life. And I think it'll bring people to Gettysburg. So a lot of great ideas. And we're going to try to incorporate that into all our initiatives here.
The recycling report, Ms. Butterfield.
Nothing to report.
The report. Okay. Takes us to elected officials' comments. Any elected officials' comments this evening? Mr. Lawver, would like to go first? Okay.
Two things. Talking about walkability in town, since I'm the youngest person in my neighborhood, which means the neighborhood age is not really young. They try to walk, and sidewalks are a big issue. It was pointed out to me that there's a sidewalk not too far from my house that is 8 inches higher because of tree roots. And I know this has been on our back burner, but we have to push this issue up next year. It's not going to be pleasant. Nobody's going to want to hear it, but it's got to happen. It just has to. And the other thing is, question I think for Harry, where are we at with the letter to the utilities about the unsafe poles that are all over Gettysburg?
I don't believe that I have that information yet to do the letter, so.
Okay.
I'm not sure where I was going to get that information.
You still have my list, Robbie?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm going to get it.
Okay.
Answers that question.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we actually discussed in stormwater this evening. There was some in that discussion about the Tiber wall. There was some discussion about sidewalks and how things have gone over time, and we kind of reached that discussion point of how we've been fortunate to have a lot of projects, many of which Columbia Gas has been involved in at different times, or GMA, where we've replaced sidewalks, or Columbia Gas has, because they were moving utilities. But there is a very significant sidewalk problem in the borough, and it's been here, well, at least since John was manager, probably before that. And I remember years ago we had a company in proposing essentially not curb cutting, but
curve shaving.
yeah, that was called, Chad, but it was a
cut.
gimmick to me.
They were cut.
Like we're gonna grind down some of the sidewalk and leave it thinner, and that's, I don't know, it never really seemed viable even when it was being presented and I was in the audience. So there certainly are places where it's a chunk of money to chew off, but it's about having a safe community. Elected officials' comments. I think so. Mayor Freeling looking to speak.
I just want everybody to remember that Remembrance Day is the 19th, next Friday. commemorating and remembering Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and there are a couple of really nice events going on in Gettysburg, including the rededication of the Civil War Women's Memorial in Evergreen Cemetery and some programs in the National Cemetery. And also, so I can share with everybody, I had my first set of office hours on campus at Gettysburg College. And students came in and sat down and talked to me. The fact is, I found one that I recruited to help Mrs. Butterfield with recycling, because she really wants to help local recycling efforts. Yes, there were some comments that weren't good, but mostly people just came in and wanted to become part of Gettysburg and help.
Wonderful. Very good. Other elected officials' comments. Mr. Carr, Ms. Butterfield.
I attended the broadband meeting on the 20th, and the task force part 2 is up and running under the capable leadership of Commissioner Marty Qualley. They're going forward. It's a slow process, but they're making headway on identifying the areas within the county that really need broadband service or improvement. I had my ride-along with the police officer, William Orth, on Tuesday, and found it a very rewarding and interesting happening. Something that pleased me is, as we rode along, over and over, bystanders, children, adults, would smile and wave, make a point of recognizing the police car. And with all the bad publicity we've had with the relationship between, I don't mean we locally, but nationally, between the police and the public, it was very heartwarming that the public seems to have a warm feeling for our local police. Officer Orth was very patient with my many questions, and it was a really informative time. I enjoyed it.
Very good. Mr. Mayor, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I just want to say last Tuesday was Election Day, and Gettysburg, Adams County, Pennsylvania in general had a higher than usual turnout for a midterm year. I want to thank everybody who voted. Like many of our neighbors, I spent the entire day in a polling place as a volunteer, and I would really like to encourage everybody who's listening, if you have time, if you can make time, when we have elections, all of our polling places need capable, competent people who are willing to gift their time. Our democracy depends on people like you and I who are willing to gift some of our time to our community, so please consider doing that in these coming elections. And please remember to vote.
Okay. Public elected officials' comments. Mr. Porter.
Jill, can you help me out with this? I think you might have mentioned about the sign-ups for the Christmas festival. There's so many different tasks that need to be done. I'm in charge of the human foosball again, and it's all day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I plan to be there most of the time, but there's a website. If you go to the website, can you say the
GettysburgChristmasFestival.com, and there is a volunteer link.
There's volunteer links for all the different
Perfect.
things that,
Yes.
so we need help. Go to that site and sign up.
Okay. Ms. Lawson.
Yeah, I just wanted to just bring out possible safety concern on the alley, Racehorse Alley on the west side of Carlisle Street. When you're just going past Waldo's, if you're in a vehicle and you're going up to Carlisle Street, and so you're going, it's on the west side of Carlisle, but you're going eastbound down the alley to Carlisle. I noticed it's really hard to see if there are any pedestrians coming on either direction, and that would be a great place for mirrors. And I don't know who is responsible for that, or if that's something that's been considered, and I see our engineer shaking his head.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of almost every alley I've ever.
that's
put a
not
fire
the only
truck
spot.
into.
There's.
That one, because
Surfing's
it's
alley
right
is another
near.
one?
Yep, surfing.
But that one is, as people are heading up to the square, and in this, the Lincoln Diner's there, the town and campus haircutting place is there, people are moving along. It's a complete blind spot.
I think, like Robbie said, Surfing Alley is a equally dangerous spot
Okay.
where when you walk past that. So.
Yeah, so it's something for us to consider. I think we need to, they have those mirrors that allows cars, vehicles, I mean, you just kind of inch out a little bit, but if somebody darts, so.
Yeah, we'd have to look at, I think, the overhead clearance, because I know some of those, I intentionally take people down them during driver training, because you get a few inches at most.
Anyway.
So yeah, I'm not sure what elevation you'd have to put them at, and they could still be useful or not. I'm not sure, we could look at that.
It can be done. We talked about some different options. One of the other options that we consider is making it a different surface so that it jumps out at, because right now it's kind of like really old pavement everywhere in those locations. So you try to really make it a different surface and make it jump out at you so that you're coming up to it, and if you can drive in a car onto a pedestrian, primarily pedestrian surface, that it jumps out at you and you want to slow down. So
Anyway, thank you.
Any other elected officials' comments? All right, if not, we'll go to public comment. Name and address, and limit yourself to 5 minutes, please.
Scott English, 6668 West High Street, Gettysburg. I wanted to thank you all for your service and dedication to the Borough of Gettysburg. Again, it constantly amazes me how awesome of a small town it is. I'm formally requesting that the English zoning text amendment be placed on the 28th of November 2022 Borough Council Workshop agenda in order to finalize the draft for motion and acceptance prior to public comment at the December council meeting. I would also like to invite folks to History Talks at the Gettysburg Academy on December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at 1 p.m. each day during the Christmas Festival. Please call the Gettysburg Academy at 717-334-0224 for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no other business any other public comment? Mr. Hale? Okay. No other business, we'll adjourn.